here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. We appreciate you being here with us every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and I'm ecstatic to be here with you this morning as we're back here in the studios, back here in familiar digs as we have been on the road this past week. We were down in the Arlington, Texas area, that Dallas Arlington area, for the AAC kickoff, the American Athletic Conference rebranding to the AAC kickoff, and we had that at Lowe's Arlington Hotel, which was a fantastic experience. And then from there, I went on to Charlotte, North Carolina for the ACC kickoff, which has been in Charlotte. It's been in Pinehurst and in Greensboro, and it was in Charlotte once again this year. And the ACC kickoff featuring for the first time ever, 17-member group of teams with the addition of SMU, Cal, and Stanford. And so I was out there for the ACC in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that was an awesome experience too at the Hilton Charlotte Uptown. So big time shout out to Charlotte and to that experience as well. So a lot of great stuff this past week. You saw a bunch of specials. So while I was on the road, by the grace of God, and we know this picture of Jesus sits right here with me, by the grace of God, being able to get home safe and sound, my luggage eventually getting to me. And everything worked out. Everything was great. So, like I said, you could sit here and you can complain about stuff, or you can say thank you to God for all of the help and all of the angels along the way, and that at no time was I left with nothing. And that, the whole God will provide is something that I definitely saw and I definitely appreciate. And, so I want to give it up to God and say many thanks to God for that. I'm happy to be here with you today. I want to thank Rain for all that they do in working with us. And so Rain, as you know, with some fantastic flavors, and this is one of my favorites there, that rainbow sherbet. So make sure you go out and get your Rain today at your local stores. You can find it at the gas station, grocery store, and so on and so forth. So head out there and get some Rain today. Happy to be here with you, and Rain providing some energy here as well as we're going to go through the entire ACC. So a lot of great stuff coming up here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. And let's hop right into it. We have an all-new intro to our ACC coverage, and here we go. Coming to you here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, our newest piece of the broadcast, DT on the ACC. I've covered the ACC for many years, but now you have the opportunity to see those new graphics and hear that music in our coverage of the Atlantic Coast Conference, which is right here, right now for you on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. So happy to be here with you, hanging out on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, jumping into the ACC, and we're going to go in this alphabetical order and taking a look at the ACC. So 17 member institutions, 17 guys. This ACC football preview proudly presented inside of the Heritage Hill Studios as we take a look at the largest ACC that we have ever seen when it comes to football, that being 17 members. Overall in the ACC, there's 18 schools, with Notre Dame in for every sport except for football. So you have that side of things, with Notre Dame adding to it all with 18 overall, sans football, and then everybody else is a full-time member of the ACC in every single sport. So just absolutely insane when we talk about what this is now, right? What the ACC has become. And Boston College came in from the Big East. Miami came in from the Big East. Pitt, Syracuse, Louisville all came in from the Big East. Virginia Tech. A lot of people, I feel like people don't know that. Don't know that Virginia Tech wasn't a member of the ACC originally. Because you think about Virginia Tech and you say, okay, that's one of the big rivalries of the ACC. But did you know that Virginia Tech used to be a Big East school? So you have all those pieces. And then you take in SMU recently here in Dallas, Texas. And for this season being their first season. And then you take two West Coast teams with the Pac-12 having issues, and you bring in Cal and Stanford, which I think is going to be temporary, but that's just my belief on things here. And so you bring in those teams, and this is what it looks like now. 17 members inside of the ACC, and we're going to break down the entire ACC, all of the teams, and then I'm going to give you my predicted order of finish. So I am going to be telling you how I think things are going to shake out here in the ACC this season in this expanded Atlantic Coast Conference. So we'll get into all of it. Kind of funny, though, calling it the Atlantic Coast Conference. I know some of you, I can't take credit for this, and I won't, because I don't like when stuff is stolen. So I'm not going to take credit for this. Somebody said All Coast Conference, and I thought that was a nice name, an interesting name here. So, I mean, the fact that it spans the two coasts now is fitting to call it the All Coast Conference and not the Atlantic Coast Conference, as we're here in ACC football coverage with Cal, Stanford, and SMU, which sounds strange, but it's true. We're here inside of the Heritage Hill Studios. Heritage Hill, and I spent time up there, brought my little brothers up there this weekend. They'd never been there. Nico and Miguel came out to see it. They saw the restaurant, they saw the bar, they saw the party area barn. We also went over and pet the goats. We walked around the lands here, took some pictures and video, and had a really nice time out at Heritage Hill Brewhouse on 3149 Sweet Road in Pompey. And then, of course, Heritage Hill North, their newest location, where we're going to be this Friday and where we are every month with the CNS North Stars. You'll see us this Friday with CNS North Stars swimming as they get set to break ground on an all-new pool coming to Cicero North Syracuse High School. Very excited for that. We'll be at Heritage Hill North this week, and we hope that you will be too on 628 South Main Street in North Syracuse, New York. We'll be there this Friday, August 2nd at 6 p.m., so come out and see us there. In this ACC coverage, like I said, we're going to go in alphabetical order with the ACC, and then I will give you my ACC thoughts on who I had, where the predicted order of finish. So let's start with Boston College and taking a look at Boston College and where they're at this season. So BC is in a situation where they had Steve Adazio and they were consistently, more often than not, making it to bowl games. Then they decided to let him go. And when they let him go, they went and got Jeff Hafley. Jeff Hafley did a nice job, right? And then he ended up leaving for the NFL. And in that leaving for the NFL, that came here, not when you want it to be, which was in early February. So you're talking about the second National Signing Day period, and Jeff Hafley leaving around that, shore up your schools and sign those that you didn't sign in December. So he ends up leaving, but they find Bill O'Brien. So a guy that leaves for the NFL, they bring in a guy from the NFL, Bill O'Brien, who was the Houston Texans head football coach and also spent time elsewhere, was at Alabama most recently as an offensive coordinator from 2021 to 2022. And when he was at Alabama with the Crimson Tide under head coach Nick Saban, Bill O'Brien worked with former Syracuse offensive lineman and former Syracuse head coach Doug Marrone, who is now also with Boston College, which makes things interesting because Boston College has long, from coach to coach, Boston College has recruited Syracuse area, central and upstate New York, kids that Syracuse wasn't giving offers to. Boston College has not only recruited the area, they've gotten kids to come from central and upstate New York right in the backyard of the Syracuse Orange. And that happened with Steve Adazio. It happened with Jeff Hafley. And we'll see if it continues to happen with Bill O'Brien, which I anticipate it will, because he has a relationship with Central and Upstate New York, with Christian Brothers Academy, shout out Brian Bruno, and so on and so forth. So that connection is going to be very interesting, because we have seen Paul Pasqualoni go through the Boston College world, Steve Adazio, who had connections to Syracuse, and then Bill O'Brien has connections to Syracuse. Jeff Hafley kept that bridge going, and now Doug Marrone, former Syracuse head coach and Syracuse football alum, is now on that staff. So it looks like a school that has been recruiting Central and Upstate New York a lot over the years, far more than Syracuse, is going to continue to recruit. But if Fran Brown continues to recruit Syracuse as well and become the first head coach in seemingly forever to recruit locally, that Syracuse and BC will have wars on the field and off the field when it comes to recruiting. So that'll be interesting to see a former Syracuse head coach and Doug Marrone recruiting the area with Bill O'Brien, who has connections to Syracuse, versus Fran Brown, who's now the Syracuse Orange head coach. So that's a backstory I'm going to be paying very close attention to. You could be sure on that, as I care a lot about these kids in the community that I grew up in. So, and beyond. When we look at Boston College, Bill O'Brien coming in, they have Thomas Castellanos, who is giving them a threat here in passing the ball as well as running the ball. The issue are his interceptions, his double-digit interceptions, which you want to keep down this season. And then in the backfield, they have Trayshawn Ward, who's a transfer coming in to join Kai Robichaux in the backfield. And then we look at the defense here. The defense last season allowed 32.6 points in the ACC and ranked near the bottom of the league in stopping the pass, and ranked near the bottom of the league in stopping the run. That's atypical of Boston College Eagle history. So they have a new defensive coordinator in Tim Lewis, and we'll see what that looks like as we step forward. So Boston College has some work to do, right? We know them for running the ball and playing really tough punch, what is it called? Punch down, drag out? Punch out, drag out? But you know what I mean. So I thought I knew it. My head was like, you got this. And then my brain was like, is it punch down? Why would you punch down? But Boston College, we know them for their defense. And the question is now, can they get that defense back up to Boston College shape under a new head coach in Bill O'Brien? And Bill O'Brien's time with the Houston Texans was somewhat tumultuous, so didn't end the way that I'm sure he wanted it to end. I shouldn't even say it was tumultuous. It was kind of in a place where he had a lot of control, because he was more than just the head coach in Houston, and it didn't work out. And while he was the head coach in Houston, they made that trade that still to this day makes no sense to most people, and that being the trade where they got rid of wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, who at the time was arguably the best wide receiver in the nation, to bring in a running back in David Johnson from the Arizona Cardinals, who was not very proven there. He had some moments, but he was also somebody that had been injured and wasn't, I mean, first and foremost, if you're going to get rid of your top tier wide receiver, you want to bring in something in the receiving core, and you got rid of your top tier wide receiver to bring in a running back who was a big old question mark, and he ended up being a question mark, and he's not even there anymore. So, that situation was an interesting situation for sure. And ultimately, it left Bill O'Brien looking for his next chapter. And then now we see Bill O'Brien, after Alabama, coming to Boston College. I think this is a huge hire for Boston College because it's a big name. Boston College bringing in who they brought in over time, it was like they're not making that big name splash, so to speak, which is no disrespect to anybody in the realm of being hired there. It was just, did a lot of people know Jeff Hafley coming in? Bill O'Brien's name looks like they're making this decision to really bang home, like, hey, we're serious about this. We're serious about what we're doing. Now, the question is, how long will can Bill O'Brien first and foremost get this thing moving in the right direction? And if he can get it moving in the right direction, how long does he want to stick around and be a part of Boston College is going to be a question mark. But for right now, this is what we got. This is where we're at. And it's going to be an interesting road to see exactly how everything really goes on here at Boston College. You'll find out my predicted order of finish for Boston College later on in today's broadcast of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. But like I said, in our coverage of the entire ACC, which is bigger than it's ever been in football with 17 members, we're going in alphabetical order, which helps you to follow along here, breaking down each of the teams inside of the ACC. So let's jump into Cal. Cal is one of the newbies here, the Cal Golden Bears, and what they bring to the table here in their first season inside of the ACC. The Cal Golden Bears, this is going to be interesting here. They're coming from the West Coast to the East Coast, and the Cal Golden Bears, when we look at their first football schedule as an ACC team coming from the, I don't even want to call it the dead Pac-12 because people think it's dead. But again, have we seen the name erased from history? Have we seen the logo erased? There's still got to be some trademarks and something somewhere. I don't think the Pac-12 is dead. I think the Pac-12 right now is figuring it out. And that's just my opinion. Now, looking at Cal's schedule, non-conference, they're going to be at home against UC Davis. They're going to be on the road at Auburn, which is an SEC team. They're going to be at home against San Diego State in the Mountain West, where they could have been. Their first ACC game, first game as an ACC member, is going to be up against Florida State on the road in Tallahassee, Florida. Then they'll host Miami in Berkeley, California. Then they'll be on the road to face off against Pitt in Pennsylvania. Then they'll be home against NC State in Berkeley. Then they'll have Oregon State, who is not a member of the Mountain West, but not in the Pac-12, kind of hovering right now as one of two teams, Oregon State and Washington State, that was left from the Pac-12 for dead. And so they're going to face off against them. That's going to be their non-conference game. Used to be a conference game. Now it's a non-conference game. So their fourth and final non-conference game will be at the end of October on October 26th. That game will be at home. Then they'll head to Wake Forest, to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Then they'll host Syracuse on November 16th, my hometown. Then they'll host Stanford, who is in the ACC as well. And Stanford, of course, was with them in the Big 12. Then they'll go to SMU and face off against the Mustangs in Dallas, Texas. So that's what their schedule looks like here for Cal in their first season in the ACC. So their back-to-back home games are NC State and Oregon State, and then they have Syracuse, Stanford. So they do get some back-to-back here, but it's going to be interesting, and the question becomes, how long are they going to go along with this? How long are Cal and Stanford and the rest of the ACC going to go along with this traveling across the country situation? It's something that they have right now. It's something that they're doing right now. But are they going to do this forever? I would imagine and say no, that this is not going to be a forever ever thing. I think, again, it's a Band-Aid to a situation with the Pac-12 that ultimately the ACC can try and advance themselves from it. And then, of course, Cal and Stanford can say that they have a place to call home. So that's how I look at this right now in the grand scheme of things. Ultimately, that's how I see it shaking out. I don't think that this is a forever thing, but this is where we are. And looking at where we are, Cal right now under Justin Wilcox, their head coach, one of the new faces of the ACC. Justin Wilcox coming in here. He has looking on the defensive side, 22.3 points a game is what they held teams to in 2021. They gave up 32.8 points last season. They're going in now. Now the positive can also be a negative here, because as they step into their first season in the ACC, and this can be said about Stanford and SMU, no one has played you, so they don't know you. But that could be a good thing, and it could be a not great thing, right? You're giving up 32.8 points in the past here. Are you going to continue to give up these points beyond this? So we shall see what's going to happen here for the Cal Golden Bears, but they definitely got to get better on defense. They have 8 returning starters, and they got some people from the portal. We look at safety Craig Woodson and linebacker Cade Uliave are two standouts for the team. Mike Bloch looking at the play calling duties. He's going to be the new offensive coordinator after Jake Spivital left to become the offensive coordinator at Baylor. So Bloch here has some interesting pieces as he has North Texas transfer Chandler Rogers at quarterback, and you also have Jaden Ott at running back, and transfers from Utah, Mikey Matthews and Tobias Merriweather from Notre Dame are in your receiving core now. So we got some question marks with Cal. The big thing is to minimize those points on the defensive side that you're giving up, because you put yourself in a position where, I mean, no matter how good you are offensively, if you're giving up those points defensively, then you're always going to be chasing something. If you got a strong defense, you can win a game 10-9. So that's something for them to look at. The Cal Golden Bears, we'll see where they stack up in my final predicted order of finish later on here in the broadcast on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. But as of right now, looking at Cal, definitely got to fix some things on defense, and they got some question marks on offense, but like other teams out there, they're looking to replenish through the portal. So not doing anything atypical of the last couple of years, and I think it might only get worse before it gets better, but that's where we're at. The next team that we have, Clemson, the Tigers. Some people are sleeping on these Tigers this season, and that's okay to sleep on the Tigers. I'm sure Dabo Swinney doesn't mind the fact that you're sleeping on him. He's going to go and do what he always does. Now, the program is 30-10 since 2021. But the way that the Clemson Tigers have looked in recent history, people have seemed to lose their minds, because, again, when you look at the Clemson Tigers, like you look at any team that is winning, once they have any type of hiccup. I remember when they said their 10-3 season, not the team said, but people on the outside looking in, when Clemson went 10-3, people started losing their minds in 2021 going, whoa, 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 whoa. Maybe, what's going on with Dabo? Why is the team not good anymore? What's happening to the team? They go to a bowl game and they go 10-3. Syracuse went 10-3. It's their best season in over 2 decades. Clemson goes 10-3 and people are ready to jump. The next year, and all jokes aside, please don't ever jump. 11-3, we look at 2022, and then they went 9-4 last year. So this is not to the standard of Clemson, but that standard was created by Dabo Swinney, because you look before that, and Clemson wasn't having, under Tommy Bowden, we go back and we look at his era, he was 6-6, 9-3, 7-5, 7-6, 9-4, 6-5, 8-4, 8-5, 9-4, 7-6, with Dabo Swinney taking over part of that season, going 4-3 back in 2008. So he never had a double-digit winning season, speaking of Tommy Bowden. We go to Dabo. Dabo in his first full season as the head coach, 2009, he went 9-5, 6-7. Then he went 10-4, 11-2, 11-2, 10-3, 14-1, 14-1, 12-2, 15-0, 14-1, 10-2, 10-3, 11-3. That means he went 12 straight seasons with double-digit wins. Tommy Bowden never had double-digit wins in a single season his entire time as the head coach at Clemson. But when Dabo took over after being the wide receivers coach and said that they were going to win in Clemson, and people laughed at him, and I recall him telling that story, laughed at him at a press conference, he has gone 12 straight seasons with double-digit wins. You include national championships and quests for national championships within this. I mean, you look at the fact that they played for a national championship in the college football playoff. They played for a national championship in 2015. They made it to the title game and lost. Then they made it to the title game and won the next year. And then they went to the Sugar Bowl the year after that, which was not in the college football playoff. Then they won the college football playoff national championship. Then they lost in the championship game. So they've played in the college football playoff national championship game 4 times under Dabo Swinney, winning 50% of the time, going 2-2. And in the last 4 seasons, they haven't made it to the college football playoff, which has caused people to lose their heads here. But keep in mind, in the last 4 seasons, the team went 10-2, 10-3, 11-3, and 9-4. in their play. So Dabo Swinney, to me, I don't think there should be concern that this guy doesn't know how to coach and he doesn't know what he's doing. But there are people that are losing their minds a little bit over it. And like I said, he's created such a high standard that it's kind of a catch-22, because you have this high standard. So when you don't make it, your fans, some of your fans there seem to lose their heads a little bit. But at the same time, as I wanted to remind you all, were you making it anywhere before Dabo Swinney? And it's no offense to Coach Bowden. It's just the conversation of where they were. I mean, you look before Tommy Bowden and you look at Tommy West, the team was 5-6, 8-4, 7-5, 7-5, and 3-8. Ken Hartfield before that was the last, well, let me look at this. Yeah, Ken Hartfield was the last, between Ken Hartfield and Dabo Swinney, the last coach to get the team to a double-digit winning record in a season was Ken Hartfield, who did it back in 1990. You fast forward to when Dabo Swinney did it in 2011. That was 21 years. Okay, 2 decades in between a coach getting the Clemson Tigers to a double-digit winning record. Ken Hartfield in 1990, and then in 2011, Dabo Swinney went on a 12-year run from there of having double-digit winning seasons. So, let's slow the ridiculousness of attacking this team, the student athletes, and head coach Dabo Swinney. Keep in mind that forever he was able to hold on to Brent Venables as one of his coordinators who eventually became a head coach. And remember that, having Brent Venables there was a big help to him. When you have guys that are capable of being head coaches serving as your coordinators, that's going to help your team be a really good team. If you have a head coach caliber guy that's a coordinator there, right? So let's remember that side of it too, is that Venables was there. Tony Elliott was there, who's been the head coach of the Virginia Cavaliers. So he was leading your offense. Venables was leading your defense. And now both of those guys are head coaches in Division 1A college football FBS. So, that's something too that can't go overlooked. And I just wanted to hit you with Ken Hartfield, 1990, Dabo Swinney, 2011, and then went on a 12-year run of that, to look at the time in between, 2 decades in between having a double-digit winning season at Clemson. And by the way, when I say that Dabo Swinney's done it 12 years in a row, and last year would have been 13 in a row, they went 9-4, so they were 1 game shy. When Ken Hartfield did it, he did it for 4 seasons in a row, not 12 seasons in a row. There's no coach in the history of Clemson that has ever come near 12 seasons in a row of double-digit winning seasons. And when we look at that too, when I want to go throughout this history here, and we talk about the fact that Dabo Swinney has aided his team to 2 national championships with the Clemson Tigers, when we go and look through their history here, they never played for a national championship before Dabo Swinney. So just giving you some background information on the fact that people should lay off of Dabo and let him do what he does. Now, Swinney here is going to look at the offense under new offensive coordinator Garrett Riley. The team averaged 23.6 points in ACC games last season. Now, the big thing is Cade Klubnik's been with the team for a little while here, and at quarterback, he's now going to have Garrett Riley teaching him. We'll see what he can do here and how he moves forward, hopefully not backward in his play. Phil Maffa at running back, looking at what he has done. 4 starters come back for 2024 on the offensive side of the ball, Phil Maffa being one of those players. And so we'll see what happens here. And true freshman Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore, they both come in and provide an opportunity to this team, Wesco and Moore, in the receiving corps for Cade Klubnik and the crew. On the defensive side, there's only 2 starters returning, and we have TJ Parker, Peter Woods, names to look at. Barrett Carter, who I had the opportunity to speak with at linebacker. He's going to play 1 more season at Clemson instead of going to the NFL. And then we look at R.J. Mickens, who I also spoke with at safety. This Clemson Tigers team, listen, some people question and get upset at Dabo Swinney for the fact that he is not going through the portal. He's trying to keep the game more true to what it used to be. And I don't knock him for that. Now, I do think the portal helps you. I do think the portal is a way the portal's a way to essentially try and get ahead of the race, right? When you bring in a true freshman, you understand that it's going to take some time in a lot of cases. And not everybody's a Trevor Lawrence, right? And Clemson knows that. And we know that. So as you watch and listen to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora around the world live Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on youtube.com and facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. I appreciate you being here with us. And as we speak on the ACC and we speak on Clemson and where the Tigers are at, this is a team that, if you're not going through the portal and you're not relying on the portal and leaning on the portal like a lot of teams are, it's going to take you more time. And with Dabo trying to stay true, trying to not punish freshmen around the world that are coming out of high school and coming out of prep school and trying to get in to college football, because keep in mind, the transfer portal is great. But the transfer portal is also something that's going to take away spots from student athletes that are coming through high school. And that's tough, right? Because you still have players, believe it or not, you still have players from 2020. Here in 2024, you still have players that got that bonus year in the COVID year. There's guys, I've talked to multiple guys within this past week. I talked to multiple guys when you talk about my coverage of college football. I've interviewed guys that are going into year number 5 and year number 6 because of that COVID year. So when they talk about, colleges and universities have lower enrollment, well, what helps enrollment is when you are taking true freshmen and bringing them into your school for sports. Because of that bonus COVID year, which is a beautiful thing for those that were in school at that time, it's also a tough thing for those trying to get into school. So when you look at lower numbers, you have to put that into it as well, of saying, okay, well, if we typically take 25 freshmen, but we're only taking 10 freshmen and we're taking 15 transfer portal guys, then that's going to affect who's coming into your school as far as enrollment goes. So I'm not worried about Clemson. I think Clemson's going to be back in the upper echelon of the ACC. And like I said, stay tuned to the end of this broadcast when I give my predicted order of finish for the Atlantic Coast Conference. But the big thing is going to be, what does Garrett Riley do as the new offensive coordinator? What does Cade Klubnik do as a leader of this team, as the quarterback of this team, and this defense that only returns 2 starters? They struggled as a team last year to Clemson standards, going 9-4. So maybe having new faces as starters is going to be a blessing in disguise. And on top of that, like I said, Cade Klubnik, what can he do here? We've seen this team really rise, and then when they've had issues at quarterback, like any team does, it's such a glaring issue. When it works, it's great, and when it doesn't work, it's debilitating at times. So let's see what Clemson can do with Cade Klubnik, hoping for him that he has his best season yet as he steps forward. The next team we're going to talk about are the Duke Blue Devils, as we go in alphabetical order of my coverage of the ACC, previewing the ACC, coming off of my time in the ACC kickoff. And make sure that you are with us over the next couple weeks, folks, because I'm going to be airing my conversations across the ACC within these next couple weeks, and you do not want to miss a second of me speaking with coaches and student athletes. Duke has a familiar face as their head coach in the ACC in the fact that former Miami Hurricanes defensive coordinator and a guy who spent about 2 seconds probably still on the plane on the tarmac when he was going to go to Temple would be the head coach. And then Mark Richt ends up retiring. And here comes Manny Diaz as Miami Hurricanes head coach after being their defensive coordinator. Well, now he's back in the ACC, but he's a Dookie now. Duke Blue Devils for Manny Diaz. I'm excited for this. I think that this is a splash for them. Like I said with Boston College, not typically hiring a name that a lot of people know nationwide, so to speak. And this is no offense to anybody. I want to be clear about that. We live in a time of society where everybody's offended by everything. When I say not as well known, I mean, you can think about it with Syracuse. Fran Brown was not a well-known name. When you look at Fran Brown, like if Syracuse had hired Bill O'Brien, people would have been like, oh, okay, that guy was in the NFL, he was at Penn State. Like he was a guy who was a head coach in months. People aren't saying that. Now a lot of people know Fran Brown. Fran Brown has become a nationwide name in certain, at least the Atlantic Coast and in Syracuse for sure. Fran has taken the who is Fran Brown and turn it into, oh yeah, Fran Brown, he's got something going on out there in Syracuse. He's done that before he's even coached a game, so credit to him for that and the work that he's put forward, because a lot of people are excited. In the case of Duke, I don't think David Cutcliffe was a household name to a lot of people. I don't think Mike Elko was a household name to a lot of people. But Manny Diaz, he's a guy we know in the ACC. Manny Diaz is a guy who, seeing him return to the ACC, this is a splash for Duke. Because remember, he's the one that brought the turnover chain, that flashiness, that fieriness, that let people see who we are. Let people, let's be different. Let's be unique. Let's be the trendsetter and have somebody copy us. Manny Diaz is not a guy that shies away from the camera, and I don't think you typically see that with Duke. So with Manny Diaz coming into the Duke Blue Devils, and I had the opportunity to speak with Manny when he was at Miami, and I had the opportunity to speak with him last week with him taking this job at Duke, and I can't wait to share that with you. I'm excited for this. Now, Duke is coming off of back-to-back bowl games under Mike Elko. Mike Elko, here's the irony in how small the sports world is. Jimbo Fisher leaves Florida State, becomes the head coach at Texas A&M. His defensive coordinator, Mike Elko. As Jimbo's still at Texas A&M, Mike Elko takes the head coaching job at the Duke Blue Devils a few years ago. He immediately has success at Duke. He gets Duke to back-to-back bowl games. Jimbo Fisher is let go from Texas A&M. Mike Elko returns to Texas A&M, not as their coordinator, but as their head coach. And with him going back to Texas A&M, where a former ACC coach was, now Mike Elko comes back as a former ACC head coach to Texas A&M, and Manny Diaz comes to Duke as a former ACC head coach at Miami. Strange how the world works. Now, with Mike Elko gone, we'll see what Diaz can do. Texas transfer quarterback Malik Murphy is on the team here, and there's going to be the opportunity. Now, Duke has a quarterback competition that's going to be going on here, and that quarterback competition, Malik Murphy, it's set in stone that Malik Murphy is going to be the guy, and that's it. We have Grayson Loftus as well here to compete for this job. And both of them came out to media days, which I thought was interesting, as we saw more than one coach at ACC kickoff bring not one, but two quarterbacks to the podiums and to go out and speak here. So that was interesting and definitely unique that we're seeing that. Normally, when there's a quarterback competition, we're maybe not seeing either one of them, because the coach doesn't want to give anything up, and we're more than most times not seeing not seeing both of them. We're seeing one or the other, right? We're seeing one of the guys that's fighting for the job. Now, I do remember that Florida State did this, where they brought Jordan Travis and Mackenzie Milton together to ACC kickoff, and that was atypical. Well, this year, multiple schools were doing it, and both North Carolina and Duke, which is interesting because they're rivals, they both brought multiple quarterbacks to ACC kickoff. So Malik Murphy and Grayson Loftus, we'll see what this looks like here. Running back Jaquez Moore is back on the team here, and the receivers Eli Pankel and Jordan Moore are both there for them. So we'll see what that looks like. Just two returning starters on the offensive side of the ball. But again, that could be a good thing. Malik Murphy coming over from Texas and Grayson Loftus, what is that going to look like? Are they going to use them both? And then Diaz on the defensive side of the ball, this is where we know him. Manny Diaz being a former D coordinator, like I said, with that turnover chain. Three starters are going to be back onto this team. So this defense has gotten better, but they're only returning 3 of their 11 starters on defense. The team last season, with all of their members, had led the ACC in points allowed a game with 19 points allowed per game. So led the ACC in fewest points allowed per game with 19, but only 3 of those starters are back. So we'll see who can step up from there. Now, looking at the defensive line, RJ Oben is gone, Anthony Nelson's gone, Aeneas Peebles is gone, Dwayne Carter is gone. So that is going to be an area of who's going to step up and who's going to showcase themselves as the new leaders. Linebacker Trey Freeman is back. Defensive backs Jalen Stinson and Chandler Rivers are back as well. So we'll see what the defense looks like. Being such a strong defense, allowing the fewest amount of points per game to lead the ACC last season, now they got to see who is going to step up with a bunch of those starters gone. But the Duke Blue Devils, I think, are going to go into an interesting era here with Manny Diaz. Duke has had some success. They definitely had success under Mike Elko, and that success under Mike Elko, I think they're going to see a different chapter under Manny Diaz. He's a different type of coach, but at the same time, Duke, I mean, this is either going to be a quick flash in the pan or this is going to be a fiery thing that's going to shake up the ACC. I think Manny Diaz has an opportunity at Duke to have people go, Manny Diaz, Duke doesn't typically make sense here, right? Duke more of that, like, reserved and the this or that. And then Manny Diaz is this fiery guy who's coming at you, bringing this energy and bringing that flair. And like I said, wanting the spotlight and wanting the camera. You didn't really see that with David Cutcliffe, grabbing the camera. You didn't really see that with Mike Elko, but you see that with Manny Diaz. Different personalities. I like all the guys, and I've interviewed them all, and I appreciate my time with every single one of them. But Manny Diaz is a different personality coming to Duke, which you don't typically see at Duke. And I think that this could be an opportunity to shake things up. If he can recruit, if his staff can recruit, and they can come together and put together something special here, we're looking at a Duke Blue Devils team that people may not want to play inside and outside of the ACC. Florida State, another team here as we go in alphabetical order of my coverage of the ACC. The Florida State Seminoles, what did I tell you? When Mike Norvell came over from the Memphis Tigers, what was my conversation? I said, I've covered Mike Norvell. I've interviewed Mike Norvell for all of his time at Memphis. I believe the whole 4 years he was at Memphis. I said, give him time. Y'all are going to be fine. Let him coach. PJ said, give him 3 years. I said, around that, give him 3 to 4 years. Let him work. Let him cook, so to speak. Under Mike Norvell, who took over Memphis after Justin Fuente came to Virginia Tech and had a lot of success at Memphis. Memphis in 2016, the first season under head coach Mike Norvell, 8-5, then 10-3, then 8-6, then 12-2, and that Cotton Bowl loss to Penn State, really not the fault of Mike Norvell. He wasn't there. He had already gone to Florida State, and really not the fault of Memphis because they didn't have their head coach. At Florida State in 2020 in the COVID year, they went 3-6, then they went 5-7, and since then they've gone 10-3 and 13-1 and should have been in the college football playoff last year. I told Florida State fans, don't say anything negative. Let Mike Norvell coach. He's going to get you to a place. Don't be surprised if he puts you in an opportunity to play for a national championship. That's what I said. That's what PJ said. We said, give him a few years, let him work. PJ said this team is going to vie for a national championship. I echoed the sentiments that Mike Norvell was rising this team up. We both believed that Mike Norvell would help Florida State get back to ACC prominence and potentially to national prominence, and he did exactly that. And he should have been coaching in the college football playoff last year, but because the college football playoff committee is not always fair, he didn't get the opportunity to do that. If the quarterback of Ohio State got injured or the quarterback of Alabama got injured, I don't believe that they would have kept them out of the college football playoff, but they did that to Florida State, and it was disrespectful, and it was wrong. The snub was inconsistent to how the college football playoff gives an unfair advantage to other schools. They have been clear that they give advantages to the Big Ten and the SEC. The difference between the Big Ten and the SEC is that the SEC typically backs it up. So in the case of Florida State, losing Jordan Travis as their quarterback, they not only cost Florida State an opportunity to play for a national championship, they cost Florida State guys who transferred out. Because in the time that they weren't playing for the national championship, guys quit on the team and left. Now, I'm not saying that, I shouldn't say quit on the team and left. They decided to go elsewhere. And the fact that they didn't get to play for a national championship and the fact that they got snubbed, people are emotional. And when you open up the portal at the end of a season, people are emotional, folks. People make decisions based on emotion. So what the College Football Playoff Committee needs to realize is they didn't cost Florida State an opportunity at a national championship. They cost Florida State an opportunity at a national championship, plus they also cost Florida State student athletes that may not have transferred if they were playing for a national championship. So let's remember the ripple effect that the college football playoff did to Florida State, which was outrageous and wrong. And you punished a team who won the ACC championship without their quarterback. You punished a team that went undefeated in the ACC. But again, Clemson has been given credit from the ACC, but not others. If Wake Forest had stayed undefeated a few years ago, I don't think the college football playoff would have put them in. And they should have been in there. And Dave Clawson would have had a gripe, and I would have echoed that gripe. But the college football playoff, like anything else chosen by humans, there's politicking in it. And with politicking in these things, you'll look at teams that have done what they were supposed to do, but you'll argue other teams. Remember the year that Cincinnati made it to the college football playoff? There were people arguing that Notre Dame should get in the college football playoff over Cincinnati when Cincinnati beat them head-to-head, and on top of that, beat them head-to-head in South Bend on the road at Notre Dame. How do you have a conversation where you say Notre Dame deserves to get in over the team that's undefeated that beat them? The easiest way to figure out who should be where is when you look at head-to-head matchup. If they've played head-to-head, who won? Cincinnati beat Notre Dame in South Bend, and then they said, well, you got to thank Baylor. Cincinnati owes Baylor a thank you for getting them into the college football playoff. They went undefeated, and they beat Notre Dame. Shut the hell up and let the teams in that work to be there. Florida State should have been in there. Cincinnati should have been in there twice in back-to-back years. UCF had a case. Boise State and the old BCS had a case multiple times. But there is politicking in sports. And there shouldn't be. You should be looking at what teams are doing and giving respect where respect is due. When you say, well, I'm not going to let this team in because there's no way that they can beat this other team, how do you know that? Ohio State's been in the college football playoff at times where they played terrible. Washington's been in when they played terrible. Notre Dame's been in twice and were embarrassed both times. So your politicking isn't working because they're saying UCF never deserved to be there. Well, can you score less than 0? Because there's teams that are really, really good that laid goose eggs. Ohio State got blown out by Clemson. Alabama blew out Washington. So what would be the difference with UCF? But they never let them in. So we can't see that. That's the frustration. Well, Florida State, looking at them this year, coming off of being snubbed, defensive coordinator Adam Fuller is going to come back with 4 starters, including defensive end Patrick Payton and defensive tackle Joshua Farmer. So Jared Verse obviously is in the NFL. He is a big loss. Played at Albany before he played at Florida State. Shout out to Jared Verse. Love his story and love the opportunity of interviewing him. I hope I get to speak with him again sometime soon by the grace of God. Miami transfer. Here's a fun thing. Within the state of Florida, coming from the Hurricanes to the Seminoles, Miami transfer Darrell Jackson Jr., Darrell Jackson, I think it's Darrell Jackson Jr. He's coming on to the team. He's got a full season here after sitting out most of 2023. And on the interior, he can help out Josh Farmer. So, and then Thomas and Cypress, looking at them at corner, and Shaheem Brown and what he can do on this team as well is something to look at. And then you have transfers and edge rusher Marvin Jones Jr. from Georgia and defensive back Earl Little Jr. from Alabama. Keep in mind here with Mike Norvell, he took from Georgia in the transfer portal. He took from Alabama in the transfer portal. That's on the defensive side. He also took on the offensive side wide receiver Malik Benson from Alabama because Florida State felt spurned. And Mike Norvell, nice guy. Probably also not the guy to mess with. So taking from the SEC and getting guys from Alabama and getting guys from Georgia, that says something. And Nick Saban, you got to think about it, when he decided to retire from coaching, maybe forever, maybe temporarily, Alabama was open season for the first time in forever. Now, their quarterback, with Jordan Travis moving on to the NFL, to the Jets, and I think in the next couple of years he's going to get the opportunity to be the starting quarterback for the Jets. when Aaron Rodgers retires, but let's not count Aaron Rodgers out yet. He's got an opportunity over the next year or two to fight for an NFL championship, and I hope he has the opportunity to. I hope he stays healthy more than anything else and can play a full season and a postseason and see what he can do. So we'll watch out for that and see what comes from Aaron Rodgers, but I hope he gets to play out the rest of his career on his terms before the torch is passed. But I do think Jordan Travis will have a chance with the Jets to be the starting quarterback. Well, with him gone, DJ Uiagalelei is back from the West Coast. He was the Clemson starting quarterback. It didn't work out. It just didn't seem like he fit. And then he went out to Oregon State, and now he's at Florida State. He's one of those guys who's in the transfer portal. He's been on 3 teams. And let's think about this. So he was with Clemson, he was with Oregon State last year, now he's with Florida State. So he's been on 3 teams in 3 years. Now, another Alabama transfer, Roydell Williams, and then you have Keziah Holmes and Lawrence Tuiafale. Each of these guys is in the backfield. So you got an Alabama transfer at running back. You got an Alabama transfer at wide receiver in Malik Benson, and you got an Alabama transfer at defensive back in Earl Little Jr. Watch out for Florida State, folks. I mean, now they don't have Jordan Travis, and like I said, your quarterback is going to dictate where you're at and where you're going in a lot of ways, because you got a good defense, but speaking of the Jets, they had a great defense last year, but they didn't have a quarterback. Where did they go? Nowhere. So this is going to really lean on DJ Uiagalelei, and can he be the guy that is going to save the Florida State Seminoles here, because they're coming off of a great season where they lost their quarterback. What would they have been like in the college football playoff with Jordan Travis? We'll never know. But now at quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, and then you have Brock Glenn, who's a redshirt freshman, and then you have Luke Kromenhoek, who is a true freshman, and then you have Trevor Jackson, who's a true freshman. So it's really DJ's team, I would imagine, and him staying healthy and him having a better run in the ACC with Florida State than he had at Clemson is going to be a big part of this thing. I think Florida State is dangerous, but people have to remember Jordan Travis isn't there. Now, there was a time where the fans booed Jordan Travis, and Jordan knew that. And there's a time where all of a sudden 2 years later they fall in love with the guy and they can't get enough of him. So we'll see how they treat DJ as DJ steps into that role as the leader of the Seminoles offense. Going to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, we're going to do that in a moment, but not before we take a step aside inside of the Heritage Hill Studios. This is Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and I am providing for you my ACC football preview with the biggest they've ever been, 17 football members, and they all converged on Charlotte, North Carolina this past week. I have plenty of interviews coming up with the ACC over the next couple weeks, and here in today's broadcast, we are previewing the ACC season at the end of today's show on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Heritage Health Studios. I will give you my predicted order of finish for all 17 teams in the new look ACC. Right after this, we have more coming up. Georgia Tech on the docket. Central New Yorkers, you can now enjoy the taste of Heritage Hill award-winning craft beers, seltzers, and a full bar at 3 locations. Spend your weekends at their beautiful location in Pompey with its amazing views, sunsets, family, and pet-friendly facilities, as well as extensive private event areas. Get their taps, tonics, and tastes in their brand new North Syracuse location at Sweetheart Corner in North Syracuse, New York. When flying in and out of Syracuse Hancock International Airport, make sure to visit their Palladino Farms location. At Heritage Hill, they believe in supporting our community and are excited to now meet you where you're at and where you're going with their local farm-raised tastes. Find out more information at heritagehillbrewery.com. Here's a message from Renee from Bryan's Landing, located on 6523 East Seneca Turnpike in Jamesville, New York. Open Tuesdays and Wednesdays for dinner, Thursday through Saturday for lunch and dinner, and Sundays for brunch.
It's a lot like the way that my mom and dad ran their restaurant. We have put in place a lot of people that are family to us, very similar to how my dad hired people that were family to him. And then the tradition I'm carrying on is a lot of the items that are on our menu are my dad's. And he taught our chefs how to recreate his dishes. So I think that Tommy McNerney, who our executive chef is, to him it is an art. And I think that when he does create a dish, it's not just about making the food taste delicious, which is definitely our priority, but it's an art to him, and it's almost like his canvas on a plate where he just wants the colors to look great, and people love it because he takes pride in that. And Brian and I appreciate that. We want it to obviously look good and taste good. I will tell you, when we opened up, it was 6 weeks before COVID. And what was amazing was the community, our friends and family stepped up, and everybody did takeout. Everybody supported us. Our hearts were just so filled. So to Brian and I, obviously our friends come all the time, and we just have repeat customers in Jamesville, and I think people going to our previous restaurant in Green Lakes are making the trip to come to Brian's Landing to support us. And I mean, I think we have great food and a great atmosphere. So it's very, very important to us.
Head to Brian's Landing, located on 6523 East Seneca Turnpike in Jamesville, New York, where memories have become recipes that are now meals to share with you. Tuesdays and Wednesdays for dinner, Thursday through Saturday for lunch and dinner, and on Sundays for brunch. And be sure to come out for live music Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Here is a special message from Brian Bruno, owner of Servomation Refreshments Incorporated.
I grew up in the family business, had the experience of working for a national food service company with thousands of employees, and as much as I enjoyed the experience I had, there's something about, owning my own company and being able to change the things I saw wrong with the industry firsthand, which is why I moved back to my hometown in Canastota, New York, to launch Servomation. It was back in 2007. When we first started the business in 2007, really you didn't find any machines with credit card readers. There's a lack of variety in machines. You got stuck with basically whatever the vending company wanted to sell that day. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the business, and those were all things that we saw as opportunities, both from a customer level to improve and from an operating level to be more efficient. We've really been at the forefront of introducing retail technology into our space. We were doing self-checkout back in 2009 before it really became a national phenomenon. The whole point of it isn't to just improve the customer experience. It's to make it feel more like a retail environment where people don't have to be afraid of what they're buying behind glass. They don't have to be afraid of not being able to see the ingredients of the packages. It was an easy transaction from that standpoint. If we were to reinvent something, we wanted to make sure what we were making looked and felt more like a deli and not like something that you would traditionally see in a vending machine. I was tired of hearing for years the customers say the wheel of death because the vending machine would circle around with the same tuna salad in it. What we wanted to do was it really changed the perception of that food. So allowing customers to touch it, allowing customers to feel the weight of it, allowing customers to see the freshness of it, and also the variety of it really helps them change the perception and ultimately the value of what we bring to them. The point of differentiation you have to make is either in value or the quality. And I think on both of those fronts, Servomation has really, in large part, changed that value system for employees. So they no longer have to worry about bringing their food from home or having to leave their desk during the day and rush out to get back in time for their break to end. We're bringing something that they can count on in their break room every day, and they know it's going to be there, they know it's going to be fresh, and they don't have to worry about it being sold out or something that they don't enjoy. We've also heavily invested in flavored water machines, so you can get a glass of water with a fresh piece of fruit in it, along with bean to cup coffee machines. So there's not a day that goes by we're not surprised when we get customers that call us and say, we didn't know you could do all this. We're really lucky to have a strong group of dedicated employees. Most of our employees have been with us since inception. They're family to us, and people like doing business with people they like and trust. And I think the same thing goes for employees. In a day and an age where there's a lot of corporations that just look at an employee as a number and don't get to know them, that's just not the way I was raised or how I like to do business. So we're a little old-fashioned. We like getting close to our employees. We like knowing how we can help them. We like knowing how we can improve their lives, adjust their schedules, whatever it may be to help improve their quality of life. And we think in the end that makes for a happier employee. We're fortunate enough to have really grown over the last several years, and from Pennsylvania to Massachusetts to Connecticut, we really do have a strong connection, even though we're not in the rooms every day with these employees. There's not one single employee that we feel like we don't know, and certainly we know they can call us at any time, and they're definitely treated as family to us. I wake up every single day really excited to surprise our customers in a good way. The one thing I could tell you is I think that every one of our employees and every one of our customers will continue to be at the forefront of every decision we make.
Find out how Servomation can help you and your business by going to servomation.com. And welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. Happy to be here with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time inside of the Heritage Hill Studios. Heritage Hill coming to you on 3149 Sweet Road in Pompey, New York at the Brew House, and their newest location at Heritage Hill North coming to you on 628 South Main Street in North Syracuse, New York, right at Sweetheart Corners, down the road from Syracuse Hancock International Airport. And on the Delta side of the Syracuse Hancock International Airport, you'll find Palladino Farms, an extension of Heritage Hill, right in the airport for those of you traveling in and out of Syracuse. With that being said, let's jump into Georgia Tech as we go in alphabetical order of my coverage of the ACC. 17 schools for the first time ever in the ACC here as we take a look at what the ACC has become with 17 member institutions for the first time ever. Pretty insane here looking at the ACC with this many teams inside of the conference. Let's take a look at Georgia Tech and where Georgia Tech is at here. So the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who some people considered for a time to be at the bottom of the barrel of the ACC, are looking to raise themselves up. We look at Brent Key in his first full season and what they've been able to do. He finished with a winning record of 7-6 last season and a 500 record in the ACC. And when people say, Dan, 7-6, that's not great. A 500 record in ACC play, that's not great. Well, let's take a look at what it's looked like for Georgia Tech in their history recently in the ACC when it comes to football. Brent Key going 7-6 and winning the bowl game in the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl, getting that victory. Let's go before Brent Key got in as the full-time head coach. Last year, or the year before that, I should say, in 2022, he coached for 8 games and went 4-4 after Jeff Collins was let go 4 games in with a 1-3 record. This is what the team has looked like in, let's go to the last 10 years. So we'll go back to 2013. 7-6 under Paul Johnson, 11-3 in a victory in the Orange Bowl, 3-9, 9-4, 5-6, 7-6 under Paul Johnson. Then under Jeff Collins, 3-9, 3-7, 3-9, and then 5-7 with 4 games under Jeff Collins, where he went 1-3 in 4 games. And Brent Key came in and went 4-4. Brent Key last season 7-6. So looking at the recent history, Brent Key did bring a positive to Georgia Tech. Now, looking at this is the fact that the games that they have here on their schedule. Georgia Tech is going to be playing a schedule that is featuring a bunch of teams that have been in that were in bowl games. Let's take a look here. 11 bowl teams. Now you play 12 games in the regular season, and they're playing 11 teams that have been to a bowl game. Florida State, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Louisville, Miami, all of those teams including in this. Let's take a look at Georgia Tech's schedule, shall we? Because Georgia Tech does not have an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination. Now, Georgia Tech will start off their season in Dublin, Ireland in week 0, as they call it. The game will be at noon Eastern time on the East Coast, and that is going to be Saturday, August 24th, when Georgia Tech takes on Florida State in Ireland. Then they'll come home to face off against Georgia State in non-conference play. Then they'll go to Syracuse for a conference game. Then they'll be home against VMI in non-conference. Then they'll be at Louisville, never easy to play there. They'll host Duke with Manny Diaz as the head coach now. They'll go to Chapel Hill to face North Carolina and Mac Brown. Then they'll have Notre Dame at home, so that's good. They're getting Notre Dame at home. Then they'll be in Blacksburg against Virginia Tech, home against Miami, home against NC State, and then they'll end the season, as they always do, against Georgia in the Georgia Tech-Georgia game, ACC versus the SEC. And so even when you look at their schedule in conference play, 2 out of their first 3 games are in the ACC. So where some teams are playing all of their non-conference games in the first 4 weeks, and they're not playing a team in their conference until the 5th week or after a bye, so maybe the 5th week, the 6th week, whatever it may be, they're playing 2 conference games in their first 3 weeks. Playing Florida State overseas and Syracuse on the road. So not only is Georgia Tech playing their first ACC games early on, but they're playing those games away from home, and then their next ACC game is at Louisville. So when you look at Georgia Tech's schedule and you say 2 games in the first 3 weeks are going to be conference games in the ACC, and then you look at 3 out of the first 5 weeks, so two out of the first 3 games. On top of them, 3 out of the first 5 games are ACC games. And all 3 of those first 5 games of the season for Georgia Tech, all 3 of those ACC games being played in their first 5 games of the season are on the road. So not only are they playing 3 early ACC games, but none of them are at home. Dublin, Ireland against Florida State on neutral ground, at Syracuse, at Louisville. Then they have Duke at home, and then they go at North Carolina. Then they come home to play Notre Dame. Their schedule is very difficult for Georgia Tech here. And to me, this is going to be an interesting road for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. But looking at their team now, the offense under Buster Faulkner, seeing what they've done, they after averaging 17.2 points per game in 2022, Buster Faulkner helped the team to 31.1 points per game last season. So almost doubling their points per game from 17.2 in 2022 to 31.1 last season. Seeing Georgia Tech score in the 30s on average, huge for Buster Faulkner on the offensive side. Texas A&M transfer Haynes King, he had 275.3 total yards a game last season. And so we're looking at what he's going to do this season as he returns with Georgia Tech, as well as running back Jamal Haynes and receiver Eric Singleton Jr., as well as Malik Rutherford in the receiving core. 4 starters returning up front on the offensive line, which is huge, including Weston Franklin and Jordan Williams. On the defensive side of the ball, the team gave up 29.5 points per game last season. So scoring 31.1 points per game, but giving up 29.5, leaving you in a very dicey situation. You're giving up almost 30, you're scoring 31. So that screams shootout on average, and barely, where's that pendulum going to swing? Is it going to teeter this way or teeter that way? So they're going to have to minimize the points they allow per game here. Now, former Duke coordinator Tyler Santucci is the new defensive coordinator for Brent Key with this Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets team. So we'll see what Duke Blue Devils defensive coordinator, now the Georgia Tech defensive coordinator, Tyler Santucci, can do with this Yellow Jackets team. And 4 starters coming back here on the defensive side of the ball. So some hopes for Georgia Tech, but a very difficult schedule on the horizon for the Yellow Jackets. Now, taking a look at the next team here in alphabetical order in my coverage of the entire ACC, the Louisville Cardinals are next up here on the docket, and there's some high hopes for Louisville this season with Jeff Brom being their head coach, and not only being their head coach, but being an alum of the program. His debut season at Louisville has people very excited for the Louisville Cardinals. Now, Louisville, like I said, it's hard to play them on the road in their home. It doesn't matter what their record is. They could have 2 wins, 3 wins, 10 wins. You don't want to play them in Louisville. And last year, they did a great job under Jeff Brom overall, 10-4 under Scott Satterfield. They went 8-5, 4-7, 6-7, and 8-5 with Deion Branch taking over for the last game there. So Scott Satterfield went 7-5. Before that, Bobby Petrino was 2-8 before he was let go. Lorenzo Ward going 0-2 after that in 2018, where the team went 2-10. Petrino's time there, 9-4, 8-5, 9-4, 8-5, and 2-10. So Petrino did do some good things. Charlie Strong, who I think shouldn't have left. And when I sat with Charlie Strong when they were a member of the Big East at the time, which was becoming the American, I had the opportunity to sit with Charlie Strong in Rhode Island, and I really was like, part of me was like telling Charlie, like, don't leave. You know what I mean? Like when you think back on that moment, and I said, I was like, if he goes to Texas, he's going to be there for 3 years and they're going to fire him. Charlie Strong was at Texas for 3 years and then they fired him. So my prognostication came true. I wanted him to stay at Louisville because I thought he was doing some good stuff there. The team went 7-6, 7-6, 11-2, and 12-1 with him there. If the college football playoff existed in 2013, there's a chance that 12-1 team would have been vying for it. So Louisville has had some history, but it's been a minute. And the relationship with Scott Satterfield was kind of murky from the beginning when it came out that Scott Satterfield, after a year at Louisville, was looking at potentially taking the South Carolina job. And then he came out with a public apology to the Louisville Cardinals. And so it just kind of seemed like no matter what he did right in Louisville, that relationship was bound to probably not last. And it didn't. He went on to Cincinnati after Luke Fickell left for Wisconsin. So Jeff Brom returning to his alma mater, had some good stuff happen here, 10 wins, and played for the ACC championship, which was another big piece here for them. Louisville playing for an ACC championship, unheard of. And again, that was one of those teams that came from the old Big East into the ACC. So shout out to what Louisville's done. Now Louisville and Pittsburgh have played for ACC championships. Pitt is 1-1 in the championship game. So Pitt has been ACC champions. Louisville and Pitt have fought for an ACC championship. So the only team to not do that in the recent realignment of old Big East schools is Syracuse has never played for an ACC championship. However, if you go back a few years if the ACC had dissolved their divisions sooner than they did, Syracuse would have played Clemson for the ACC title instead of Clemson going up against Pitt, because Pitt was the coastal champion, Clemson was the Atlantic champion, but overall record-wise, Syracuse was better than Pitt in their overall record for the season. So they would have ended up playing for the championship, not Pitt. So interesting there, but Syracuse is the only team from Pitt, Louisville, and Syracuse to not play for an ACC title game since joining a little bit over a decade ago to the ACC. Texas Tech quarterback transfer, who I got the opportunity to speak with, Tyler Show. He is on the team here and leading Louisville. We'll see what he can do, and hopefully he could stay healthy and stay well here. That's the biggest thing here, is for him to stay healthy. Now, the team averaged 30.7 points per game last season, not too shabby. And South Alabama transfer Colin Lacey at wide receiver here, as well as Donald Chaney, who came through the portal and can help them in the backfield. On the defensive side of the ball, 7 returning starters of the 11 players from last year. Ashton is back on the team, 14.5 tackles for a loss. Quincy Riley at cornerback. I spoke with Quincy and Ashton. Going to have the opportunity to hear from those guys. And defense coordinator Ron English, we'll see what he can do with this team. Linebacker TJ Quinn led the team with 92 tackles last year, and he is back this year, probably hoping to break triple digits and get to 100 tackles. So we'll see where Louisville stacks up in my coverage coming up at the end of today's broadcast with my predicted order of finish. Let's go to the Miami Hurricanes under Mario Cristobal. and where this team is. Now, Miami is one of those teams that in the Big East, they were the darling. They were the juggernaut. And then they've kind of lost some of that flair over the years, right? They went into the ACC, kind of dipped off into a very quiet area, and the Canes aren't used to being quiet, but we didn't really hear from them too much. And now Miami has gotten some hype over the last few years. They've underperformed. Can they perform with the hype this time around? Adam said, see you later tonight. Have a great day. You too, sir, because I will be guest broadcasting on Herb FM with Adam and Chris later tonight. So make sure that you watch and listen to that as we continue the talk on the ACC. I'm bookending it. I'm doing morning and night ACC coverage, and I want to thank Herb FM Radio for letting me come on as a guest. And they're going to be coming on the show, Adam and Chris, on Thursday to return the favor there and get them on the broadcast to talk about the ACC as we continue our coverage of the ACC leading in to the 2024-25 football season. Looking at Miami, here's the thing. The hype is there, but can they back it up? Now they have quarterback Cam Ward coming in from Washington State. You have Damian Martinez coming in from Oregon State. And then Xavier Restrepo on the receiving core is going to be there with the team once again. And offensive line has 3 starters coming back, which is huge there if they could stay consistent and do well together. And, I mean, the offensive line, if they perform well, then it's good to have the guys back. When they don't perform well, then you're saying, okay, we got 3 starters returning, but are they going to keep their job? Now, we look at Mario Cristobal on the defensive side. He has transfers, Michelle Powell coming in from Washington, and then Hill coming in from Marshall on the defensive back world. And then defensive end, Akeem Mesidor and Reuben Bain Jr. are going to be returning, and Michigan State transfer Simeon Barrow is going to be on the interior of the defensive line. So Miami, Mario Cristobal came out a couple years back and was all about not shying away from the world of NIL, name, image, and likeness, speaking about collectives, which is essentially a bank account where you donate to the collective of the school and the school decides where to put their money. He's been advantageous with this, the portal and money and everything that's involved with that. We look at Miami and what's Miami going to look like this season? And that's going to be, again, talking about the fact that this is a team that wasn't really getting a lot of hype a few years back. And then they started to get the hype, but they would kind of fizzle out and things didn't work out ultimately. Now, when you look at guys that are coming on to this team and what's going on here, a new addition to the team, we have, wide receivers, Samuel Brown, you have Trader, both coming in at wide receiver, Nye Carr coming in at wide receiver, Zach Carpenter, a redshirt senior transfer who's coming in at center, Cam Ward, who's transferring in at quarterback, Reese Poffenbarger, who's coming in at quarterback as well as a transfer. And then at running back, you have Mark Fletcher Jr., you have Ajay Allen, and you have Jordan Lyle, who is a true freshman. On the defensive side of the ball, you look at Tyler Barron, Simeon Barrow Jr., C.J. Clark, all transfers coming into the defensive line. Their backups are transfers Marley Cook and Elijah Alston. So on the defensive line, you have at least 5 guys that are new faces through the transfer portal. And then when you look at linebacker, you have transfer Jalen Alderman at middle linebacker, Cam Pruitt, who is a freshman. And then at nickelback, Michelle Powell, who I mentioned, and Zaquan Patterson. Powell is a transfer. Patterson is a true freshman. Isaiah Taylor is a transfer at free safety. But your other linebackers, your linebacker core there, you got guys that are returning to the team. And then at your cornerback position, you have guys like Darrell Porter Jr. as him coming back onto the team, taking a look at him, as well as Damari Brown. So, I mean, this is a team defensively that is a mix of transfers and returners. And the linebacker core, bringing in one transfer there, but when you look at DB and you look at defensive line, could be a total new look for the Canes. And then wide receiver wise, we'll see what that ends up being when they brought in some transfer guys. Your quarterback's got to be different, and we'll see what your running back with the backfield looks like, as well as, if Xavier can truly lead that receiving core with some of those new faces. So Miami's going to be a hodgepodge of guys that are returning and guys that are transferring into the program, which leaves some question marks. But there is, once again, some hype for the Miami Hurricanes this year. We'll talk about if that hype is going to be in my predicted order of finish. North Carolina, the Tar Heels with Mack Brown. I think every day that we have Mack Brown is an unexpected blessing, because who would have thunk he would have returned to North Carolina, and who would have thunk that not only would he have returned to North Carolina, but that he would still be coaching in this world. But he loves to help, and he was talking about how he spoke with coaches about that, and Bobby Bowden, and about that need of why are you in coaching, why are you still doing it, and that need to help kids, the need to teach them and be there for them, and to help, to go outside of yourself and to help people and guide people. Well, the North Carolina Tar Heels, folks, when we take a look at this, Miami's got the hype. Carolina has had some hype in recent history, and that's because of what Mack Brown has been able to do in his return. He's got 3 quarterbacks fighting for the job. Max Johnson, who's now at his third home in college football, Jacoby Griswold, and Connor Harrell. I had the opportunity to speak with Connor and Max at ACC Kickoff. You'll see that coming up within the next couple weeks. So their quarterback situation could be 2 guys, could be 3 guys. We could see all of them or 2 of them this season. And we've definitely got some new faces via the transfer portal with Griswold and Johnson, and Connor Harrell not getting a ton of time out there, and he's a redshirt sophomore now. And then in the backfield, Amarian Hampton is back. Darwin Barlow comes in as a grad transfer. At wide receiver, we have familiar faces in J.J. Jones, Gavin Blackwell, Nate McCullum, as well as Kobe Paysour, Chris Culliver, Paul Billups II, and so on and so forth. So there's some consistency there. When we look at the offensive line, Trayvon Green is back. Willie Lampkin is back. Austin Blask is going to be a grad transfer at center. Jonathan Adorno is back at left guard. And then you look at the blind side for the quarterback. Left tackle is a redshirt sophomore transfer, Howard Sampson. So we'll see what Sampson can do. He's backed up by Jarvis Hicks and Eli Sutton at that left tackle blind side position. Defensively, it's a lot of returning guys from North Carolina, which will be great for experience and the team actually knowing each other, being familiar with each other. They bring in grad transfer Jakeem Harris at free safety. They bring in Stewart as a junior transfer at corner, and they bring in Josh Harris as a grad transfer at nose tackle, but everybody else is returning on the defensive side of the ball, which bodes well for Mack Brown here. Like I said, familiar faces that have worked together with one another. Now, they're 17-10 over the last 2 years, but we'll see if we can have some consistency. Drake May has moved on to the NFL and to the New England Patriots. So what will we see from this team as they try to get everything, and I said Griswold, pardon me, for Jacoby, Griswold, not Griswold. So Griswold as well as Johnson and Harrell all fighting for that starting job, what that's going to look like. Hopefully Amarian Hampton can help them in the backfield to give them some relief at whoever the quarterback's going to be. I would imagine we're going to see more than one at least to start off the season. Kamen Rucker, who I had the opportunity to speak with, was 8.5 sacks last season. Power Eccles is back as well for the team. Like I said, the defense returning a lot. So North Carolina, the hope is that they're going to figure some of these things out and be able to get on the right side of things as they step forward. We look at Mack Brown and what he's done in his return to North Carolina, and in his time with North Carolina, let's take a look at this. He came back in 2019. He went 7-6, 8-4 in the COVID year, 6-7, 9-5, and 8-5. So he's only had one losing season, and that was barely a losing season, and that was from the Duke's Mayo Bowl loss. He was 500 in the regular season, and then went 6-7 after the bowl loss. So he has led North Carolina to a bowl game in every single year since he came back in those 5 seasons, and he's had a winning record in every season but 2021, which was 6-7. Overall, in his time at North Carolina, in 2 stints, he has 107 wins, 73 losses, and 1 tie. So looking at Mack Brown here and the work that he has done, he obviously wants to be better than 9-5 and 8-5, but we'll see what the team can do as they move forward. Last season in 2023, not the season that you wanted to have. And again, we talk about the hype and what this team had going on for them, right? The belief that they were going to vie for this and vie for that. And ultimately, they dropped off a bit here. When we go back and look at their 2023 season, they went 8-5, 4-4 in the ACC, but they ended the season by losing 3 in a row. They beat South Carolina. They beat Appalachian State in double overtime. They beat Minnesota. They beat Pittsburgh. They started off 4-0. They started off 6-0 last season, beating Syracuse, beating Miami in a shootout 41-31. Then they lost to Virginia in a close game, 31-27. They lost to Georgia Tech in a close game, 42-46. Then they defeated Campbell. Then they defeated Duke in double overtime, 47-45. Then they lost to Clemson by 11, lost to NC State by 19, lost to West Virginia in the Duke's Mayo Bowl by 20. So they started off 6-0. Then they lost 2 close games, could have been 8-0. And then we look at, how they ended the season losing by double digits. Now, can that be injury? Can that be fatigue? Can that be lack of depth? Was it some coaching error? We look at all of that and say, can they finish off a season the way that they've started a season? And that's going to be a big question mark to look at for this North Carolina team under Mack Brown as they step forward. Being a consistent bowl team is great, but obviously you want to have consistency throughout your season and be consistently good, not occasionally great. I keep saying that because it's true in all walks of life, and Dino Babers talked about it all the time. We look at the team in 2022, they went 6-0 on the road, but they ended the season losing 4 in a row overall. So think about that. 6-0 away from home North Carolina was in 2022. They started off the season beating Florida A&M, Appalachian State, beating Georgia State. So they started off 3-0. Then they lost to Notre Dame by 13. Then they defeated Virginia Tech. Then they defeated Miami. So you start off the season and you say, okay, you're 3-0. You drop 1 to Notre Dame. You're 3-1. Then 4-1. Then 5-1. Then 6-1. So in 2022, North Carolina, and then after beating Pittsburgh and West Virginia, and then Wake Forest, you're 9-1. So in 2022, North Carolina's 9-1. 9-1. They end the season losing 4 in a row. In 2023, they start off 6-0 and they lose 3 in a row. So really, it's about how North Carolina is going to finish and being consistently good throughout the season, not starting off the season hot and fizzling out. That's what they've done the last 2 years. We'll see if they can correct those mistakes under Mack Brown this season. Starting off 9-1 in 2022 and losing 4 in a row, 6-0 in 2023 to start off, and then losing 3 in a row, which includes them losing their bowl game in both of those seasons. So North Carolina got some hopes here, but we'll see what they're going to do at quarterback, and they're going to have to finish off their seasons stronger than they have these last couple years. Looking at a 9-1 team and a 6-0 team, you're looking at teams that could vie for the ACC championship, and the media had chosen them to fight up against Clemson for an ACC title game within these last couple of years. But again, North Carolina fizzled out at the end of the season, and that affected where they ended up. The next team to take a look at is NC State, hailing from Raleigh, North Carolina. Alphabetical order of taking a look at the entire ACC in my ACC football preview today on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. Let's take a look at NC State. Dave Doeren does not get the respect that he deserves. Him and I have built a really good relationship over the years, and I appreciate my time with him, and I appreciate the conversations that him and I get to have here and on and off the air, and we got to talk on and off the air at ACC Kickoff. Always good to see Dave Doeren. He's a guy that was a total stranger to me 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And I started covering the ACC when really he started being the head coach of NC State. And the reason why I respect him is because I've covered him and I've watched him and I've seen what he can do. So I didn't know him. We were total strangers. Didn't know he existed. He didn't know I existed. The reason why we know each other now is I cover the team and I have a lot of respect for Dave Doran. And I've defended him probably against the NC State fan base sometimes as well. Doran became the head coach in 2013. Yeah, so that's when around then I started covering the ACC, and he went 3-9. Then he went 8-5, 7-6, 7-6, 9-4, 9-4, 4-8, 8-4, 9-3, 8-5, 9-4. He's only had 2 losing seasons, one of them being his first season as the head coach of the team. Now, looking at this beforehand, let's go to Chuck Amato. Chuck Amato's time in 2000, he became the head coach, and NC State under Chuck Amato went 8-4, 7-5, 11-3, 8-5, 5-6, 7-5, 3-9. So he ended his career as the NC State head coach how Dave Doran started it, with a 3-9 record. Tom O'Brien after Chuck Amato went 5-7, 6-7, 5-7, 9-4, 8-5, and then he went 7-5. And then Dana Bible took over, went 0-1 in 2012, and then Dave Doran took over. So Dave Doran has led the team to 5 straight. They went to 5 straight bowl games. They've been to 8 bowl games in his 12 years overall. They've won 3 of those bowl games. And when you look at Dave Doran's time at NC State, like I said, 2 losing records, and more often than not, look at what they've done: 8-4, 9-5. Or 8-4, 9-3, 8-5, 9-4 in the last 3, or in the last 4 seasons. 9-4 since 2007, or pardon me. Let's go back to 2014, his second season. So first season as a head coach at NC State, he goes 3-9. Second season, he goes 8-5. He gets 5 more victories from one season to the next. So let's take a look at this, shall we? 5 more victories from 3-9 to 8-5. So taking a look at that. So let's say 2014, at least 8 wins in a season. He did it in 2014, 2017, 2018, 2020 in the COVID year, 2021, 2022, and 2023. 7 years he's had at least 8 wins as the head coach of NC State. So let's look at him now. Huge for what he's doing. Huge for the work that he's putting forward here. Big ups to him for the work that he has done. And when we look at 6 of the last 7 years, when I talk about having 8 wins, right? Of those 7 years where he's had 8 or more wins as the NC State Wolfpack head coach, of those 7 years, 6 of them have come recently here. In 6 of the last 7 seasons, he's had at least 8 wins. So think about that. 7 overall seasons in 12 years. 7 in 12, he's had at least 8 or more wins as the NC State Wolfpack head coach. 7 times in 12 years. Of those 7, 6 of those 7 years of 8 or more wins has come in the last 7 years. So an even better statistic is not the 7 years of having 8 or more wins in 12 seasons, but the fact that of those 7, 6 of them have come in the last 7 campaigns. In the last 7 seasons with Dave Doran as head coach, the team has gone 9-4, 9-4, 4-8, 8-4, 9-3, 8-5, 9-4. Now it's just about getting a few more and getting an ACC championship. Can they do it this year? Now, Coastal Carolina's Grayson McCall is going to be their quarterback here. And looking at the receiving core, they have Kevin Concepcion, and they have a transfer from UConn, Justin Jolly, and a transfer from Ohio State, Noah Rogers, and a transfer from Wake Forest, Wesley Grimes, which is interesting here because Wake Forest and NC State have a rivalry here. And Jordan Waters, who's transferring in from Duke, ran for 819 yards last season. So coming in from the Duke Blue Devils. So grabbing a guy from Wake, grabbing a guy from Duke is not only NC State getting guys from the transfer portal, but they're getting guys from the transfer portal that are ACC players that are playing within the same state as them. Duke not that far away, right? So when you look at this and you say to yourself, of the transfer portal and of this kind of rivalry and banter back and forth, when you look at NC State getting guys from Duke and Wake Forest, you're getting guys within your conference of the ACC and guys within your home state. So when you talk about can NC State and Dave Doran stack up in recruiting against Duke and Wake Forest, well, they pulled a guy from Wake Forest who's at Winston-Salem, and they pulled a guy from Duke who's in Durham, North Carolina, to bring them to Raleigh. So those are some huge victories there, especially if those guys pan out. Speaking of Wesley Grimes at wide receiver from Wake, now at NC State, and Jordan Waters from Duke, now at NC State in the backfields. And then you look at 4 returning starters on the offensive line, with Notre Dame transfer Zeke Correll being at the center position. So you got 4 returning starters, and then your center that's coming in as a transfer from Notre Dame. Not too shabby if he stacks up here. Now, NC State's defense has been in the top 3 in the ACC in fewest points allowed every year since 2021. So we look at these last few seasons here where their defense has been in the top 3 in the ACC in points allowed, fewest points allowed. Now, coordinator Tony Gibson is going to be looking at what he can do here. He's only going to return 3 starters, and he lost Peyton Wilson to the NFL at linebacker. But lineman Van is back, and cornerback White is back as well. And so that could be something that can help the team out as they look to move forward. NC State has been underrated. Dave Doran has been underrated. The student athletes have been underrated. These are NFL caliber guys. And like I've said before here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, you have to look at the facts that Dave Doran and his staff are not just good recruiters of college football Division 1A FBS talent, but they somehow can look at a guy and see that this guy is an NFL talent. Because when they're recruiting these guys that come to NC State and play well at NC State, a ton of them go on to the NFL. So there's something about Dave Doran and his staff's ability to look at a kid, a high school kid, a prep school kid, and not only see that he can be successful at NC State and in the ACC and nationally, but that he can be successful in the NFL. Because it's no coincidence that NC State gets NFL caliber guys like Peyton Wilson. Big time shout out to Peyton. Much love. I pray he stays healthy and always stays well, including all the guys that are out there and all the girls out there fighting for their dreams to come true, whatever they're doing, including playing in the sports world. Next team up, the Pittsburgh Panthers. Pat Narduzzi with the Pitt Panthers, looking at Pitt football here and how the team has been doing. Like I said, they won an ACC title. They can hold that over rival Syracuse. And the Pitt Panthers, in their time under Pat Narduzzi, the Doozer went 8-5 in his first season as the head coach of the Pitt Panthers, coming from Michigan State. He went to the Military Bowl, went 8-5. Then he went 8-5, 5-7, 7-7, 8-5, 6-5 in the COVID year, 11-3, 9-4, and 3-9. He had by far his worst season last season, but Pat Narduzzi has done an incredible job with this team. He's done a phenomenal job. Think about that. Since 2015, 8-5, 8-5, 5-7, 7-7, 8-5, 6-5, 11-3, 9-4, 3-9. He's only had 2 losing seasons being the head coach of the Pitt Panthers, going 8-5 in his first 2 years. So you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of his 9 seasons as the head coach at Pitt, he didn't have a losing record. 7 of 9 seasons, he's had a 500 or better record. 1 season at 500, 7-7, which he did in 2018. So in 7 of 9 years, he hasn't had a losing record at Pitt, speaking of head coach Pat Narduzzi. 6 of those 7 years, he's had a winning record. The other year, he had a 500 record, 2 losing seasons. 2 losing seasons in 9 years. But people freak out, and he went 3-9 last year, and people are like, well, what have you done for me lately? So now we have to look at Pitt and see who they are stepping forward. Let's take a look at the Pitt Panthers. Now, in offense here, the Panthers only averaged 20.2 points a game and 5.3 yards a snap last year. So this is going to be interesting. Cade Bell arrives from Western Carolina to be the play caller on the offensive side of the ball. Now, remember that Pitt has had to deal with the fact that they lose guys that are, their coordinators. And that typically is stating that your team is doing a good job, right? When your coordinators are becoming head coaches, or your coordinators are going on to another program to be a coordinator, or they're going into the NFL. So that's something to look at. You can't sit here and be upset about those situations, but you got to bring in the right guy, right? When somebody leaves. I talked earlier about Brent Venables and Tony Elliott at Clemson, both head coaches now, and we're under Dabo Swinney as coordinators, defensively and offensively, respectively. So Cade Bell now coming in from Western Carolina. We'll see what he could do to call the offense for the Pitt Panthers, get them to score some more points here. Now, quarterback Nate Yarnell and Eli Holstein will go up against each other to see what they can do in the fall. And the return of running back Rodney Hammond Jr., that's big. Receivers, Kanata Mumpfield, and also looking at tight end Gavin Bartholomew, and 4 starters back on the offensive line for Pitt. On the defensive side, they gave up 27.4 points in ACC play last year, which is the most that they've given up since 2018, when they gave up 28.1 points in ACC play. So we'll see what happens here. They lost defensive end Dayon Hayes, and linebacker Solomon DeShields to the transfer portal after the spring, which I think is ridiculous. There shouldn't be this transfer portal stuff happening after the spring, because you think about it. Once you started spring ball, you've officially gone in. I mean, a lot of teams go into their next season in December or January, right? When their last game is played and either lost or won, on to the next season. In the spring, you're training your guys, you're showing them the regimen, you're showing them the playbook. For them to be able to go through a spring, go through the playbook, know the secrets of a team, and then go transfer somewhere else, kind of ridiculous. I think the transfer portal needs to be easy on that, right? Unless a coaching change happens, where like a coaching change shifts. In the case of Jeff Hafley, who left in February, right, and Bill O'Brien comes in. But the transfer, and at that point have a waiver. But the fact that the transfer portal can allow for movement after spring ball, we saw Alabama lose people under Nick Saban. We saw Clemson lose people under Dabo Swinney. It's got nothing to do with coaching. It has to do with the fact that you could literally go into spring ball, get the playbook, go out there, and you get put in second, third, fourth string, and you go, screw it. I'm not going to fight in the fall. I'm not going to work out in the summer. I'm going to leave and go somewhere else. Or you find out you can get more money somewhere else. I don't like the fact that guys can go into the transfer portal after spring ball, because to me, I'm thinking these guys are leaving my team. I wasted time on them. I wasted workouts with them. I wasted all this extra time that we took with them. And on top of all of that, and I don't want to say wasted time that you're not trying to build up good young men, but I'm saying if this guy's going to leave in the spring, which you don't know, I think once you start spring ball, that's your team. That shouldn't be crazy to say. But once you start your spring, that's your team, right? Spring, summer workouts, fall ball, that's your team. Outside of a coaching change or something drastic or emergency waivers needed because somebody's family or whatever. But to be able to leave after spring ball, if I'm a head coach, I'm thinking to myself, I put all my blood, sweat, and tears on this guy that quit on me, and now he's going to take my playbook, and he can transfer anywhere in conference. He could go to any of my rivals. He can go to anybody that we're playing this season and say, hey, look, this is what Pitt's going to do. So being able to transfer after the spring, when you have Hayes and you have DeShields, because the thing is, once you start spring ball, fans take a sigh of relief and they say, outside of injury, this is our team. Well, thanks to the transfer portal, now if the guy doesn't get injured, he can go into the transfer portal and still leave. So you come out of spring ball going, wow, DeShields and Hayes, they did a good job. And then they're like, screw you, I'm out. So, and that's not a knock on DeShields or Hayes. They're utilizing a rule that's in place for them. I'm just using them as an example. But the fact that you can leave a team after the spring, if I'm a head coach, I'm thinking this team is leaving, or these guys are leaving my team with valuable information that I do not want to be shared. I'd have them all sign something when they leave that they can't talk about it or they can get sued. Now, projected defensive end starter Nate Temple, he had a season-ending injury. So you got a Pitt team that went 3-9 last year. They lose 2 guys to the portal after this spring here in 2024. They lose defensive end Nate Temple, who's a starter, to a season-ending injury. So hopefully this team can get back on the right side of the things. I think Pat Narduzzi and the team are going to struggle this year. And the unfortunate of losing guys to the portal added into the fact that you lost a starter to a season-ending injury is troublesome, right? It's troublesome. And they got to figure out who their quarterback's going to be. Now, Desmond Reed, who's a junior transfer, can he help out Rodney Hammond Jr. in the backfield? Rodney being a senior. The good thing is their wide receivers are familiar faces. Reynolds, Mumfield, and Kenny Johnson, they're all back. Zion Fowler-L, he's back. Sincere Lee is a junior transfer. Raphael Williams Jr. is a redshirt junior transfer. So we'll see what that looks like. They got their offensive line back. They got most of their defense back here up front. They got their linebackers back, and they got a lot of their special teams back. So the good thing about this is they brought in a ton of transfers that can create depth for the team. And Will Pitt, with these familiar, in bringing in all the transfers that they brought in, they still got a bunch of guys that are familiar on the defense, and all throughout their offense, they have familiarity. So they went 3-9 last year. If they could take the lessons learned and get that knowledge and wisdom to cook on the field, we could see this team in an uptick season. So yeah, they lost some guys to the transfer portal, and yeah, they lost a starter on the defensive line to a season-ending injury, and God willing, he'll be okay and be well and come back stronger and better than ever. But the fact that Pittsburgh has the consistency of familiar faces on offense and defense can bode well for them as they go forward this season. Like I said, if the guys learned from last year, they did it together. They went through 3-9 together. And if they went through all that together and went through the adversity, now if they work as a cohesive unit and show that they learned from last season's mistakes and the things that they can control and correct, we could see this 3-9 team shift to maybe 9-3, or maybe at least in a place where they can make it to a bowl game. When we look at the Pitt Panthers football schedule coming up here in 2024, and we come off of that 3-9 season, but say that a lot of familiar faces are returning with the Pitt Panthers, let's take a look at that schedule for Pitt, right? So this is what Pitt looks like this season. They're going to have Kent State. That game's going to be at home. Then they'll be at Cincinnati, who doesn't have Luke Fickell as head coach anymore. Scott Satterfield, who, was at Louisville. And then you have the Pitt West Virginia game. This is a big-time game. That game's going to be in Pittsburgh, which is huge. Youngstown State's going to be in Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh's going to start off the season playing 3 out of 4 games at home, including their rivalry game against West Virginia. Then they'll be at North Carolina. Then Cal will come to Pitt. Then Syracuse will come to Pitt. Then they'll go to Dallas to face off against SMU. Then Virginia and Clemson will come to Pitt. Then they'll go to Louisville, and then they'll go to Boston College. So they got a nice schedule here. 3 out of their first 4 games at home, including that rivalry game against West Virginia. Then you got Syracuse in that rivalry at home. You have Cal coming from the West Coast to the East Coast to face off against you. You're not playing Stanford. You're not going to California this year at all. Then you have Virginia at home and Clemson at home. So that's good for Pitt. They have to play Louisville on the road. That's never good for anybody. But Pitt, like I said, a lot of returning faces on offense and defense, added into the fact that they brought in some transfers to help, added into the fact that their schedule looks better for them than maybe some other teams out there. And Pitt could put themselves in getting back to a winning season. and getting back to a bowl game for Pat Narduzzi, who's only had 2 losing seasons in 9 years as the head coach at Pitt. SMU and the Mustangs, they're in their first season inside of the ACC. And what does SMU look like this season? Well, you speak about high hopes. There's high hopes for SMU, according to some out there. We'll see where I have them when I give you my predicted order of finish at the end of today's broadcast in this wall-to-wall ACC preview on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Heritage Hill Studios. SMU under Rhett Lashley doing some good things. SMU under Chad Morris got to the winning side of things again, got into a bowl game. Then they won with Sonny Dykes, who went to TCU and vied for a college football playoff national championship. And then they went to Rhett Lashley, who's been doing some good things. So there's something to be said about that. And Rhett Lashley returns a ton of starters, 14 starters, won 11 games last season, and won the American Athletic Conference Championship title for the first time ever in SMU history. So how about that? SMU wins the AAC championship for the first time ever in the AAC in their last season in the AAC. They were 8th nationally of over 130 FBS Division 1A football teams in college, the Mustangs were, with their average of 38.7 points per game, almost 40 points per game. Nuts. Preston Stone, quarterback, is back from injury, God bless. And they look at their offensive line, which has some retooling. Branson Hickman's coming from Oklahoma. Marcus Bryant's coming from Missouri. Now, Oklahoma's had success in recent history. Obviously, they were the darling of the Big 12 with Texas. And Marcus Brown, coming from Missouri, had a fantastic season last season. So there's some good stuff happening there. Now, the defensive side, they gave up 33.8 points per game in 2022. The Mustangs gave up 17.8 last year. So a team that was 8th in the nation over 130 plus teams that play FBS football, Division 1A football, of 130 plus teams, SMU was 8th in the nation, averaging 38.7 points per game on offense. And on defense, they're scoring 38.7 points per game on average on offense. They're allowing 17.8 points per game defensively, cutting it from 33.8 in 2022 to 17.8 in 2023, shaving off 16 points from one year to the next. So think about that. Not every team can boast of that, right? To be a team that's scoring almost 40 points on average per game and allowing almost half of what they allowed defensively the year before. So you're scoring almost 40 points a game, and then your defense is going from allowing 33.8 to 17.8 from 2022 to 2023. Massive, massive improvements. Rhett Lashley doing a fantastic job after Sonny Dykes did a fantastic job, after Chad Morris did a fantastic job. SMU doing some great things here, and I think that they're one of those teams that might come into the ACC and shock some people. And I'm excited to watch. Stanford, the third team to talk about that is a new addition to the ACC, the third and final addition for 2024-25. As a full member, Cal, Stanford, and SMU are all full members to the ACC, football included. And for here, Stanford's got some questions here, right? So as we take a look at Stanford and what Stanford can do this season, the Cardinal inside of the ACC, Stanford's got some work to do. Now, as they come in here, quarterback Ashton Daniels is returning. True freshman Elijah Brown is there. And then Io Manor is among the top receivers. He had a 1,000-yard season last season. And then you have Tiger, one of my favorite names, Tiger Bachmeier, 36 catches last year. And tight end Sam Roush give you options there for whoever the quarterback's going to be. Daniels Brown. Either one of those guys. The offensive line gave up 41 sacks last year, so that's something to work on. Defensively for Stanford, we look at the fact that they gave up 38 points a game. So you talk about SMU, a new team coming into the ACC, scored 38.7 points per game on average last year. And another newbie coming into the ACC, Stanford, flipped. They gave up 38 points a game last season and allowed 6.6 yards a snap in Pac-12 contests last season. 38 points a game given up in the Pac-12. 7 starters are back defensively, and coordinator Bobby April II has edge rusher David Bailey, linebackers Tristan Sinclair and Gathan Bernadelle, as well as cornerback Colin Wright, to see if they can right the ship here with Stanford and get on a better side of things as the Stanford Cardinal look to make a splash in their first season in ACC play. And in their first season in ACC play, let's take a look at who Stanford has on their schedule and how the schedule looks before we take another step aside in our ACC preview here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora from inside of the Heritage Hill Studios. Let's take a look at Stanford's football schedule here in 2024, their first year in the ACC once again. So Stanford is going to start their season off at home against TCU of the Big 12, which is ironic because the Big 12 took from the Pac-12, and the Big 12's taking from the Pac-12 eventually led to Stanford leaving the Pac-12 for the ACC. Stanford will be home against Cal Poly. Their first road contest will find them going across the country from California to New York to face off against Syracuse in their first ever ACC game as a member of the conference when Stanford goes to Syracuse on a Friday game, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on Friday, September 20th. They will stay on the road, and after facing Syracuse the very next week, 8 days later, on Saturday, September 28th, they will face Clemson. Then their first ACC home game as members of the conference will be Virginia Tech coming to Stanford, California on Saturday, October 5th. Then they'll go back on the road. They'll go to South Bend to play Notre Dame. Then they'll host SMU. Then they'll host Wake Forest. And then they'll go on the road to face off against NC State. Then they'll host Louisville. Then they'll stay in the state of California, but go on the road to play Cal, who was with them in the Pac-12 and is now with them in the ACC. And then they'll stay in California and play San Jose State out of conference. So when you look at the schedule here, and you say to yourself, Stanford in the ACC, 2 games non-conference at home. Then they're going to go on the road and play Syracuse and Clemson in ACC play. Then they're going to come back home, go back on the road, and there's no break in between. Saturday, October 5th, home against Virginia Tech. Saturday, October 12th, South Bend against Notre Dame, which is not a conference game because Notre Dame is in the ACC for everything but football. Then you're going to host 2 teams in the ACC. Then you're going to go on the road to North Carolina, and then you're going to stay in the state of California for your last 3 games of the regular season. That's a nice schedule for Stanford. That's a very kind schedule for Stanford of saying, hey, yeah, you're going to have to play Wake Forest at home. You're going to spend 2 weeks at home. You're going to spend 1 week on the road and then have to go back home. But think about this. Think about how great Stanford's schedule is. When they play SMU at home and Wake Forest at home, both games inside of ACC play in their first season in the ACC, after going to Raleigh, North Carolina to play NC State on Saturday, November 2nd, they get a bye week. So they have 2 weeks before they play again. And when they play again, their last 3 games are in the state of California. So I would say Stanford's got a really nice schedule in their first season in the ACC. It works out very well for them. Play 2 games at home, 1 game on the road, then have 2 weeks until your next game, And those next 3 games are all in the state of California. 2 of them are on the road, but you're not leaving the state of California. And one of them is against Cal, who you know all too well. So I think Stanford's got arguably one of the best schedules, if not the best schedule, of the ACC this season. So that's some good stuff going on. We're going to take a step aside. We got 4 more teams to get to. We'll be back with my hometown of Syracuse, then Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest in my coverage of the ACC, previewing the entire upcoming season of ACC football with more teams than they've ever had, 17 football members. We're talking about it inside of the Heritage Hill Studios right after this. Central New Yorkers, you can now enjoy the tastes of Heritage Hill award-winning craft beers, seltzers, and a full bar at 3 locations. Spend your weekends at their beautiful location in Pompey with its amazing views, sunsets, family, and pet-friendly facilities, as well as extensive private event areas. Get their taps, tonics, and tastes in their brand new North Syracuse location at Sweetheart Corner in North Syracuse, New York. When flying in and out of Syracuse Hancock International Airport, make visit their Palladino Farms location. At Heritage Hill, they believe in supporting our community and are excited to now meet you where you're at and where you're going with their local farm-raised tastes. Find out more information at heritagehillbrewery.com.
Hi, this is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating at 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and always online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond, order anywhere, anytime at maandpaspopcorn.com. Stop in to get a tin at Ma and Pa's on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York to get your half-price refills for the rest of your life. Come to Ma and Pa's for your holiday gift giving for family, friends, employees, and clients. And remember, for fundraising and events, to call 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you?
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily, and we bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvalite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvalite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant.
GG Cards and Breaks. Like, comment, subscribe.
GG Cards and Breaks comes to you on 639 Delmar Place in Syracuse, New York. You can be with them every Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Sundays from 10 to 5, right there with all of your sports card and trading card needs with basketball, football, baseball, hockey, soccer, all sport, AEW, UFC, as well as Disney, Lorcana, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Pokemon while supplies last. Singles, packs, boxes, graded cards, and the only place with every NFL and MLB and NBA team having their own box right there on the back wall. You can find all that you need to protect your cards as well with different size top loaders as well as sleeves. You can get the one-touch cases, boxes to put your cards in, along with binders and the sheets within those binders. They have everything that you need at GG Cards and Breaks to make this such an easy transition into becoming a sports card and trading card collector. If you've never done it, it's a great time to start. And if you have done it, it's a great time to continue it at GG Cards and Breaks. Here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. We appreciate you being here with us as always. And it means the world to me to be able to have this conversation with you on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Back here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Heritage Hill Studios, we're previewing the ACC and giving you our coverage of every single ACC football team in their largest conference in football ever, having 17 members with the addition of SMU from Dallas, Texas, as well as Cal Berkeley, the Cal Golden Bears, and the Stanford Cardinal from California on the West Coast, and SMU right there in the middle of the country. So you got, it's called the Atlantic Coast. Good location-wise, but doesn't make sense name-wise. So we'll see here. I think that, if I had to put my feet to the fire, I think that SMU has no desire to leave the ACC, but I think that Stanford and Cal, this is just a Band-Aid with their time in the ACC. I don't think this is a for long here. I think the Pac-12 will either find itself a reemergence, or there will be a new West Coast Conference identifier that we will see. I know there's a team called the West Coast Conference in the WCC. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm speaking on is I think there will either be a rebirth of the Pac, or we will see a new West Coast Conference that will find itself with maybe some of these old Pac teams. So I think Cal and Stanford are not for long in the ACC, but they are there for right now. the next team that we have up in my coverage of the ACC in alphabetical order, and keep in mind, you want to be here at the end of today's broadcast when I'll be taking all 17 of these schools and give you a predicted order of finish 1 through 17 in my opinion. So that's all coming up here in the not too distant future here inside of the Heritage Hill studios. And make sure that when you're in Central New York, you head off to Heritage Hill. So for those of you ACC fans coming in for a game this year, and those of you that live in Central and Upstate New York that are Syracuse fans, head off to Heritage Hill Brewhouse on 3149 Sweet Road in Pompey, New York, and head out to Heritage Hill North right outside of the airport, which is great for all of you traveling in for games. That's on 628 South Main Street in North Syracuse, New York, that being Heritage Hill North. So let's jump in. And for those of you in the airport coming to and from for games and for work and whatnot, and just travel and seeing family, Palladino Farms is in conjunction with Heritage Hill, and you'll find Palladino Farms on the Delta side of the Syracuse Hancock International Airport. If you're looking straight on at the airport, that'll be the left side. So there's two terminals on Terminal A and B. So if you're on the left side of the airport, you'll find Palladino Farms. So make sure you head off there today and support Heritage Hill and support local and small business. Syracuse is next up here in the conversation. The Syracuse Orange head into their first season with Fran Brown as their head coach. And they have worked to put this team together through the transfer portal, as well as by finding freshmen and having guys return like Justin Barron at defensive back, like Marlo Wax Jr. at linebacker, LaQuint Allen Jr. at running back, bringing in Kyle McCord from Ohio State, who knows what it's like to be not only in the Big Ten, but to vie for a national championship with the Ohio State Buckeyes. So a lot of good stuff there with bringing in Kyle McCord, Fran Brown, having this team and for the first time this season as a head coach coming from Georgia as an assistant. Well, in Fran Brown's first season, Syracuse will not play Florida State. Syracuse will not play Clemson. Syracuse will not play Louisville. All teams that have been a thorn in the side of Syracuse. And they will not have to play SMU, who's an uptick team, in my opinion, coming into the ACC after being an uptick team over the last few years inside of the American and nationally. Kyle McCord comes in to the team in 12 starts for the Buckeyes last year. He had 3,170 yards and 24 touchdowns, coming on to a Syracuse squad that finished last in the ACC in passing last season. Arande Gadsden II is back from injury. God bless. LaQuint Allen is coming off of a 1,000-yard rushing season. And then you look at Fidel Diggs, who represented Syracuse at the ACC kickoff. He's a Texas A&M defensive lineman transfer into the Orange. He comes with a familiar face. The defensive coordinator of Syracuse came from Texas A&M's coaching staff, that being Elijah Robinson. So the guy that was helping Fidel Diggs along is now with Fidel Diggs as his coordinator at Syracuse. Deuce Chestnut is back after a little hiatus with LSU. So Deuce was brought in under Dino Babers. He transferred from Syracuse to LSU. Now he's back to Syracuse. Love seeing him. Agent Zero on the team. He will wear number 0. And we will see Syracuse go from a 3-3-5 to a 4-2-5, which means we're going to have 4 sets of hands in the dirt, which is what I like for the Orange. So they're going to take the advantage of the fact that they've had a lot of good defensive backs in this 3-3-5 scheme that have made it onto the NFL. So they're going to keep 5 on the back line, but instead of having 3 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers, they're now going to have 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and keep the 5 in the back. I like it. I'm looking to see what this is going to materialize as. Marlo Wax, Justin Barron, as I had mentioned, and what this team can be for the Syracuse Orange this season. And looking at Syracuse football as we head into the fall coming out of the spring and what that depth chart looks like, Kyle McCord is the quarterback of this team. They got some guys to be the future potential quarterbacks of the team. Carlos Del Rio Wilson is back, and Braden Davis is back as well. LaQuint Allen's going to be backed up by Yassine Willis, who is supposed to be a true freshman at Pitt. But when Fran Brown came in, there was still the opportunity that there was no signing of that commitment, and Yassine Willis, who was committed to Syracuse rival Pitt, is now going to be a Syracuse Orange. And Jaden Hart coming in as a freshman as well in the backfield. Demetrius Weatherspoon, redshirt junior transfer at right tackle, will help the team out as they needed some help at the right tackle. Mark Petrie is back at right guard. Jean-Marie Reed, who's been on the show, is at center. Josh Alawa is also back at center. Jacob Bradford, Lysander Moolo is back on the team as well. Kalen Ellis is back. And Enrique Cruz Jr. is back at left tackle. Josh Miller brought in as a redshirt freshman transfer. Trevor Pena is back at wide receiver. The wide receiver room is going to be shaken up a bit here as Aronde Gadsden Jr. is back coming off of Aronde Gadsden II is back coming off of injury. Max Mang is back. Dan Villari's back, who can also play quarterback. All of those guys are back in the tight end room. Aronde Gadsden II really being a wide receiver, but being put at tight end opens up the door for Jackson Meeks and Zeed Haynes, who are both transfers coming into the team. Amari Hatcher is back. Donovan Brown is back. Trevor Pena, who is a jack of all trades, is back. And on the defensive line, you have Dennis Jaquez Jr., who is back, as well as Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff. But Dion Wilson Jr. is transferring in. Fadil Diggs, who I mentioned, is transferring in. Isaiah Hastings is transferring in. James Hurd is transferring in at linebacker. And as we look at that, so talking about all the guys there on the defensive line, and then looking at linebacker, Derek McDonald's back, Marlo Wax Jr. is back, and you also have Anwar Sparrow back to go with James Hurd, who's transferring in as a redshirt freshman. And then looking at the defensive backs, where there will be 5 of them continuing on in this defense from a 3-3-5 to a 4-2-5 under Elijah Robinson, the new defensive coordinator of Syracuse under Fran Brown's first year. You have Elijah Clark, Jaden Bellamy, Justin Barron, Jaden Gould, Greg Delane, all back on the team. But you bring in Marcellus Barnes Jr., you bring back Deuce Chestnut, you bring in Devin Grant, as well as Brahim Long Jr. to see what this team is going to look like. In special teams, Jack Stonehouse is back as the punter. Brady Denneberg is here as the kicker and kickoff. And Trevor Pena is looking to return those kicks for the team with potentially Donovan Brown. So we'll see what that shakes out into. But some good things happening with Syracuse, some high hopes with Syracuse. And when you look at Syracuse's football schedule, not having to play Clemson, not having to play Florida State, not having to play Louisville, all of that comes from the dissolving of divisions in the ACC. Now that the ACC doesn't have divisions, Syracuse, keep in mind, was in the Atlantic side of the divisions for Atlantic and Coastal in the ACC, which meant that they had to play Louisville every year. They had to play Clemson every year. They had to play Florida State every year. So with the dissolving of divisions, not only do they not have to play those teams every year, but they now don't have to play any of those teams this season, lucking out in 2024 to not have to go up against those teams. Syracuse's football schedule for my hometown school is going to look like this year. Syracuse will be at home against Ohio to start off the season in non-conference play against a team in the MAC. They'll play them on August 31st on a Saturday, mid-afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Their first game against the ACC, first conference play game, is going to be the second week of the season when Georgia Tech comes to town, which I mentioned earlier. Georgia Tech's schedule does not bode well for Georgia Tech, but it bodes well for Syracuse. It's going to have Georgia Tech the second week of the season at home on September 7th on a Saturday at noon. Then Stanford will come to Syracuse Friday, September 20th, Friday Night Lights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Holy Cross will come to Syracuse on September 28th at noon Eastern Time. Syracuse does not leave Syracuse, New York for the first 4 weeks of the season, playing 2 conference games in the ACC against Georgia Tech and Stanford being a new addition to the ACC, and 2 non-conference games against Ohio and Holy Cross. What a fantastic schedule for Fran Brown's first season at Syracuse and first season overall as a head coach in college football. Their first road game will be a Friday night game at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific at UNLV, going up against them at Allegiant Stadium, the home of the Las Vegas Raiders. That game is Friday, October 4th. Then they'll be on the road for their first ACC road game. They're not playing an ACC road game until mid-October on October 12th. Then they'll have a break of a bye week. They'll be back after my birthday, Thursday night, on October 24th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time against Pittsburgh. Then they will be home on November 2nd against Virginia Tech. Syracuse has been known in recent history to play no games at home in October. That will be no different this year. They will play all of their games in September are going to be at home. Then none of their games are going to be at home in October. And then they'll be back at home to start November on November 2nd on a Saturday. Time is still to be determined against Virginia Tech. They'll be on the road the next week on November 9th at Boston College. Then they'll be on the road in California on November 16th against Cal. And then they'll be at home against UConn, which is a non-conference game, on November 23rd. And then at home against Miami on November 30th in Syracuse to round out the season and round out ACC play. The irony that UConn, Syracuse, and Miami were all Big East schools back in the day. So their last two games of the season are against former Big East foes. One of them is a conference game. One of them is not. UConn, one of two teams that is still independent in Division 1A FBS football, UConn and Notre Dame. Miami has not played in the Dome in 22 years. And their first game back in the Dome in 22 years is on the same day that they played 22 years ago, November 30th of 2002 in the Dome, and now November 30th of 2024. So some really cool history there that Miami's coming back to the Dome for the first time in 22 years, and it's to the date of the last time they were in the Dome. And people are saying, how can Miami and Syracuse have spent over a decade in the ACC as ACC opponents, and we never saw Miami there? Well, that was the old scheduling, the ACC. The new scheduling will put Syracuse and Miami against each other for the opportunity that if you stay at your school for 4 years, you will see a team at least twice. So that's exciting here, as you're going to see, if you stay for 4 years, you will see a team home and away. So Miami will now have to come to Syracuse in a 4-year span, but this is the first time they're doing it in 22 years, which people are actually completely shocked at this. That, they're saying, wait, Syracuse came into the ACC in 2013 and they haven't faced off against Miami at home at all. That is very true. So when we go back and you look at history, folks, I'm going to go right back here to Saturday, November 30th, 2002, Syracuse lost 49-7. That's the last time that Miami has played Syracuse in the Dome. This game will be Saturday, November 30th, to the date 22 years later. And how about this? The only time that Syracuse has played Miami in the ACC. Keep in mind, Syracuse has been in the ACC for over a decade. They've only played Miami once since joining the ACC over a decade ago. They've only played them one time, losing to Miami in Miami Gardens 27-19 in 2017. On my birthday, Saturday, October 21st. So think about, if you didn't think to yourself before how bad ACC scheduling was with divisions and having 14 member institutions, think about this. Syracuse and Miami, since being Big East foes, have never played each other in the ACC all but one time. In over a decade of Syracuse being an ACC member, they've only played Miami once in football in over a decade, and that was at Miami. So when you say, how can Miami face Syracuse as ACC foes for over a decade and only see them once? That was the old schedule. First time in 22 years since Syracuse and Miami have played in the Dome in Syracuse, New York. And it is going to be 22 years to the date and to the day of the week, mind you. This is set up to be some really cool history. Saturday, November 30th, 2002 is the last time Miami came to the Dome. won 49-7. 22 years later, it's a Saturday again. It's November 30th again, and it's back in Syracuse again, 22 years later. And it'll be the last game of the regular season for the Orange. I expect you all to fill the dome of almost 50,000 plus. There should absolutely be a sellout for that game, and I look forward to it. I'll give you my thoughts on where I think Syracuse is going to end up in just a few minutes. Let's go to Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest to round out our ACC preview of all 17 teams in the conference. The next team that we have to go to is going to be Virginia. Virginia under Tony Elliott has struggled. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Virginia struggled under Tony Elliott. Under Bronco Mendenhall, there was some life. But if we take a look back at the Virginia Cavaliers year by year, Virginia under Bronco Mendenhall, they had Bronco as their head coach for 5 years. Or pardon me, for 6 years. And it didn't seem like he was there that long. 6 years under Bronco Mendenhall, the team went 2-10, 6-7 with their 7th loss being in a bowl game, 8-5, 9-5, 5-5 during the COVID year, and then 6-6 before they parted ways with Bronco. Tony Elliott has been 3-7 and 3-9. 3-7 and 3-9. Before Tony Elliott and Bronco Mendenhall, under Mike London, the team went 4-8, 8-5, 4-8, 2-10, 5-7, 4-8. So Virginia struggled under Mike London, had life under Bronco, ended with an 11-11 record in the last 2 seasons that Bronco was the head coach. Literally 500. And now has had 2 losing seasons with Tony Elliott leaving Clemson as offensive coordinator to become a head coach for the first time ever. Now, despite having a 3-9 record last season, keep in mind that the team lost 5 games last year by 1 score and defeated both North Carolina and Duke, who both went to bowl games. Now, Virginia's defense ranked last in the ACC in points allowed last year with 33.8 given up on average. They gave up 6.1 yards a snap, which is more than halfway to a first down. 8 starters come back on defense, with safety Antonio Clary coming off an injury, God bless, and may he continue to stay healthy. Defensive end Cam Butler missed most of last season. He's back. Linebacker Cam Robinson. Safety Jonas Sanker. Now let's go to the offensive side. Malik Washington had 110 catches for Virginia last year. He's gone. Now, in ACC games, Tony Elliott's offense improved by almost a touchdown from 2022 to 2023 in ACC play and points scored. Their numbers improved by almost a touchdown from his first season to his second season in ACC play. Quarterbacks Anthony Colandrea and Tony Musket will go up against each other. Malachi Fields looks to help the team at wide receiver. Notre Dame transfer comes in at wide receiver, Chris Tyree. And the ground game will have Kobe Pace. But question marks arise for Virginia, who has had a lot of struggles in recent history. And Tony Elliott's looking to have his first winning season as not only the Virginia Cavaliers head coach, but to have his first winning season as a head coach in college football. So, like I said, a lot of question marks for the Virginia Cavaliers. Let's take a look at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has wins in 5 out of their last 7 games in 2023. So we talk about teams like North Carolina that didn't finish strong. Well, Virginia Tech did the opposite. They won 5 of their last 7 games last year. Head coach Brent Pry, there's some hope with this team. So looking at what this team can do, there's been a positive move for them going in a direction that should have some people excited. Let's take a look at Virginia Tech football by year. So Virginia Tech, Justin Fuente, like I said, having a lot of success at Memphis, has put us in a place where people thought he was going to come to Virginia Tech and continue that success. And he immediately did, vying for an ACC championship. When the ACC championship was moved from Charlotte for a year to Orlando at Camping World Stadium, I was there. And Virginia Tech gave Clemson all they could. And they were close. So Justin Fuente here went 10-4 in his first season as the head coach of Virginia Tech. Then he went 9-4, 6-7, 8-5, 5-6, 6-7. Well, he went 5-5. J.C. Price took over and went 1-2. So Justin Fuente, not a bad coach. And Justin Fuente had to navigate through injuries. 10-4, 9-4 to start off his time as the Virginia Tech head coach. 6-7, 8-5, 5-6, 5-5. I don't think they necessarily should have fired Justin Fuente. I think that man should have been a guy that you give a little more time to, especially with the way he started things. But Brent Pry comes in, he goes 3-8, and he flips 3-8 to 7-6 and goes to the Military Bowl, wins the Military Bowl to get above 500 in his second season as the head coach. So there are reasons to be excited when you look at the Hokies. Now the Hokies, looking at their offense, they're returning all 11 starters, including Kyron Drones, their quarterback. They're bringing back Bayshul Tootin at running back, and Jennings is back, Felton is back, and Lane is back at wide receiver. 4 starters coming back to the offensive line, and we'll see what they could do as they move forward. Now, defensively, they allowed 23.8 points per game last year. They have 8 starters back, including Antoine Powell-Ryland, who had 14.5 tackles for a loss last year. Corners Dorian Strong and Mansour Delane are back. And Middle Tennessee transfer comes in at linebacker Sam Brumfield. So fans are excited about Virginia Tech, with them winning 5 of their last 7, returning the majority of the starters on offense and defense who helped them win 5 of their last 7, and the fact that Brent Pry got a winning record in his second season as the head coach of Virginia Tech. The last team that we have to talk about here brings me to Wake Forest and the Demon Deacons, a team that consistently doesn't get respect within the ACC or outside of the ACC, but based on media coverage, it at least seems like Wake Forest is getting a little more respect lately, which is about dang time. And again, when I talked about Dave Dorn and I having a good relationship, and we were total strangers to each other. But I respect him. He was a total stranger to me, and I respect him because of watching him coach and seeing what they've done in over a decade of my coverage of the ACC. Same thing with Dave Clawson. Him and I were total strangers, and then I watched him coach Wake Forest, and I have respect for him based on his work. Well, some people don't have a lot of respect for Wake Forest going into this season, ranking them pretty low. Now, when you look at Dave Clawson and what he's done at Wake Forest football is in a place where they have been in the top 3 in the ACC multiple times during multiple seasons. in recent history. They almost won the ACC, and we're going to put the College Football Playoff Committee in a place where they were going to have some splaining to do if Wake Forest had stayed undefeated. Dave Clawson became the head coach in 2014. The whole time I've covered Wake Forest and then some has been with Dave Clawson as the head coach. He's been there for 10 seasons. In his 10 seasons, he's gone 3-9, dating back to 2014. 3-9, 3-9, 7-6, 8-5, 7-6, 8-5, 4-5 in the COVID year. 11-3, 8-5, and 4-8. So let's take out the COVID year, right? That very unique year. From 2016 on, he's had a winning record in 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, and 22. So outside of the COVID year, in 6 of 7 seasons, he's had a winning record. 6 of 7, sans the COVID year, Dave Clawson's had a winning record. The only losing record of those 7 years is last year, where the team went 4-8. Keep in mind, who did the team not have last year when they went 4-8? Sam Hartman, who built up his career at Wake Forest and then went on to Notre Dame. So that 4-8 year is without your quarterback, who had been your darling. And this is one of the things I don't like about the transfer portal, is here's Sam Hartman, who Wake Forest goes and recruits. They build up. He has a tremendous career at Wake Forest. And then he leaves Wake Forest to go to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame inherits a good quarterback after Wake Forest, Dave Clawson and the crew built up the guy. But with losing a guy to the portal, Wake Forest goes to the portal to bring in Boise State and Louisiana Tech transfer Hank Bachmeier, who will go up against freshman Jeremy Hecklinski, as well as senior Michael Kern, who all have an opportunity to become the starting quarterback this year. The team threw only 6 touchdown passes in ACC play last year, which is not good because you play in the ACC 8 of your 12 regular season games. So that means they had less than 1 passing touchdown in ACC play last year. A game. Less than 1 passing touchdown a game. 6 passing touchdowns in 8 ACC games means that they averaged less than 1 passing touchdown a game last year. Awful for Wake Forest. Running back Demond Claiborne and receivers Taylor Morin, who I had the opportunity to speak with, and Donovan Green are all back here to help out the team. The offensive line gave up 49 sacks last year. 3 starters come back. They got to do better in that world. Defensively, they held ACC teams to 27.5 points a game, which is down from 33.8 points allowed in ACC play in 2022 by the Wake Forest defense. So once again, Wake Forest allowed 33.8 points per game defensively in 2022 in ACC play. They lowered that to 27.5 last season. So from 33.8 to 27.5, that's about a touchdown a game that they're allowing less. Jasheen Davis and Kevin Pointer are back on the defensive line. Linebacker Dylan Hazen is there, and secondary is going to have to get better here. The secondary ranked last in the ACC in pass efficiency defense in 2023. So when we look at Wake Forest's depth chart for football in 2024, when you have a secondary that was last in the ACC against the pass, against pass efficiency defense, let's look at their secondary. They bring in a redshirt senior transfer, Capone Blue. Trayvon West is back at corner. At nickel, Evan Slocum is back. Antonio Robinson Jr. back at nickel. Nick Anderson is back at free safety. Devon Patterson is back at strong safety with Rashawn Tung. And at corner, Jamari Glack as well as DeMarcus Rankin. So you got a lot of guys returning on a team that was last in the ACC in pass efficiency. The hope that those guys will learn from the knowledge and wisdom of last season, and that their experience will bode well for them, and that they won't have back-to-back years of inefficiency against the pass. You look at their middle of their defense. Dylan Hazen, like I said, is back. Quincy Bryant's back. Aiden Hall is back. And then Branson Combs comes in as a redshirt senior transfer. On the defensive line, they return Jasheen Davis, Kevin Pointer, that I mentioned, as well as Bryce Ganius and Kendron Wayman. And their second string returns as well. Outside of Mateen coming onto the team, Mateen Ibarogba is on as a junior transfer. Everybody else on the defensive line is coming back for Wake Forest. Offensively, with Hank Bachmeyer fighting with Michael Kern and company, Damon Claiborne, Tate Carney, they're back in the backfield. The offensive line is back, and the receivers are back. So there's a lot of familiar faces at Wake Forest on offense and defense. There's familiar faces on special teams as well, with their punter, Ivan Mora, place kicker, Matthew Dennis, kickoff with Tyler Black, and their punt return with Taylor Morin, as well as Damon Claiborne potentially at kick return for them. So familiarity is there with Wake Forest. But like I've said with other teams, it's familiarity, but familiarity that has to learn from adversity. Going 4-8 last year, as much as you have returners on offense, defense, and special teams, and in a time where the transfer portal has created college football free agency, the positive here for Wake Forest is that a lot of your guys haven't left. But a lot of those guys that haven't left don't know what winning felt like last year. So as much as they're familiar faces, they now have to be consistently good, not occasionally great. We'll take our final step aside here in our ACC preview on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Heritage Hill Studios, coming up momentarily. Now that we've gone through all 17 teams in alphabetical order of ACC football, I will tell you my predicted order of finish 1 through 17 for the ACC, coming up right after this on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life, from inside of the Heritage Hill Studios. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville beats. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you. Looking for your next ride? Look no further than Great Lakes Honda City, located on 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Serving our community for decades, their new and pre-owned vast array of vehicles are available to you Monday through Saturday on site. To search from home, shop at GreatLakesHondaCity.com. Call 315-365-5576 to set up an appointment. That's 315-365-5576 for Great Lakes Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Great cars, great people, Great Lakes.
Our corporate purpose
us at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognize that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career, it's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicoli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicoli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there, and of course you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100, and also find them on myavicolis.com. That's myavicollis.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying, in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. We've given you our coverage of the entire ACC football world with 17 teams for the first time ever, 17 institutions, the 14 that I've been used to covering, with the addition this year of SMU from Dallas, Texas, who I covered for many years in the American, and Rhett Lashley, the head coach, who I know well as Stanford and Cal, who come from what was the Pac-12 in their first season in the ACC. West Coast teams on an Atlantic Coast Conference schedule as members of the ACC. Very strange. Cal coming from Berkeley and Stanford coming from Stanford, both in California. The Cal Golden Bears and the Stanford Cardinals. So now it is time for me to provide for you who I believe is going to be where in my predicted order of finish for the ACC. Now, this is my predicted order of finish going into the season for 2024-25. There's 17 teams to look at. And as much as I sat and put this together yesterday, I'm sitting with myself today saying, yeah, I think some of these teams need to move up. I think maybe some of these teams need to move down. So this is what I've come to terms with. because some of these teams are going to play some really, really difficult schedules. And there's a team that I thought might be a little bit better when I was putting this together last night and saying to myself, like, I think this is where I could see this team going. And then I looked at the schedule and then I said, yeah, this team's going to have a gamut to run. This team's going to have a gamut to run. So this is my predicted order of finish for the ACC in their first season with 17 schools. Are you ready? Inside of the Heritage Hill Studios, this is my prediction of how the ACC will finish in football for this 2024-25 season. At number 17, the Virginia Cavaliers. At number 16, Pittsburgh. At number 15, Stanford in their first season in the ACC. At number 14, Cal in their first season in the ACC. So I have the two California schools finishing back-to-back, Cal at 14, Stanford at 15. At number 13, Wake Forest. At number 12, Duke. At number 11, with a tough schedule, and I originally had them a little bit higher, Georgia Tech. At number 10, Boston College in Bill O'Brien's first year there. At number 9, in their first season in the ACC, the highest I have any of the three newcomers, SMU. At number 8, Syracuse. At number 7, Miami. That could flip based on how Syracuse plays Miami toward the end of the season, but this is Fran Brown's first season as a head coach going up against Mario Cristobal. So at number 8, Syracuse. At number 7, Miami. At number 6, North Carolina. At number 5, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, North Carolina, and Miami, mind you, I've like flip-flopped them in that region of 5 to 7. I was like, no, that team here, no, that team here. No, let's move that team up. So breaking the top 5, Virginia Tech. At number 4, NC State. At number 3, Louisville. At number 2, Florida State. At number 1, Clemson returns to the top of the ACC. And Clemson and Florida State will play for the ACC title game and, more than likely, a rights to the college football playoff top 4, which would give either Clemson or Florida State a bye in the newly expanded college football playoff of 12 teams. So once again, taking a look at this, I went 17-1. Now I'll go down the line 1-17 to give you it both ways. 1-17, my predicted order of finish for ACC football's expansion to 17 teams in 2024-25. Number 1, Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, NC State, Virginia Tech rounding out the top 5. Number 6, North Carolina, Miami, Syracuse, SMU, BC. Outside of the top 10, Georgia Tech at number 11, Duke, Wake Forest, Cal, Stanford, Pitt, and Virginia at number 17. And it breaks my heart to put anybody at 17, as I know Tony Elliott's working hard. I look forward to seeing what will happen to the coaches and the student athletes. I have to put somebody somewhere. So please understand that it is not easy for me to put anybody in the bottom echelon. It's no disrespect to any of the schools. And like I said, it hurts my stomach as somebody who gets to know these student athletes and coaches on a professional and a lot of times personal level. Cal and Stanford struggled in the Pac. I think they're going to struggle in the ACC, and I think the West Coast stuff is not going to be easy. Although Stanford has a better, they have a really nice schedule as far as how they get to end their season. Wake Forest, without Sam Hartman, it's taken a little bit of time. Duke with Manny Diaz could shock some. I think 12 is probably higher than other people have them. Georgia Tech, somewhere in that region of 9-11. BC, I'm excited about Bill O'Brien being there. SMU, they're going to be underestimated, and they don't have to come as far as the West Coast. They only have to come from Dallas. And SMU is no stranger to having to play teams on the East Coast playing in the American. Syracuse, in the top 8 under Fran Brown, could be higher. They got a pretty good schedule. Not having to play certain teams, like Louisville, like Clemson, like Florida State. And they don't have to play SMU. Miami, putting them at 7 is giving them some hope here, but I can't put them in the top 5 because that hype hasn't come through. North Carolina, got to stay healthy, have to finish the season strong. 2022, you start 9-1, you don't finish well. You lose 4 in a row. Last year, you start 6-0, you lose 3 in a row. So that's why I got them at 6, and Virginia Tech above them. NC State, this is an 8-9 win team more often than not under Dave Doran. Can they make it to 10? I think they can. Louisville, we'll see with Jeff Brom. I think they're a dangerous team. Played for an ACC championship last year in Brom's first season back to his alma mater. And Clemson and Florida State are still the darlings to me. So that's why I chose what I chose. Jerry said we agree on 1. NC State was our only common ground. So, Jerry, you picked 1 through 17 different than me? 16 of 17? I want to see Jerry's list. So, with that being said, that is my coverage of the ACC. More than 2 hours of coverage here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Almost 3 hours in a 2-hour show of making sure that you have the information you need about the upcoming ACC season. 17 teams for the first time ever. Cal, Stanford, and SMU in their first season ever in the ACC. And I still have Clemson and Florida State at the top of things here. We'll see how it all shakes out in my coverage of the ACC. And please understand, folks, we are just getting started. Inside of the Heritage Hill Studios, the ACC interviews with student athletes and coaches is coming up over the next couple weeks, and we still have plenty to show you from the American Athletic Conference in the AAC kickoff. We did our background of the AAC. I'll do my predicted order of finish with the AAC as well. I can't wait to bring you all this coverage of the AAC, the ACC, and college football in general for 2024-25. In the meantime, this has been Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Heritage Hill Studios. Live for you around the world on YouTube.com and Facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT, and on WakeUpCallDT.podbean.com. Once the shows go live, you could find us in the archive. And this show, the ACC preview, will be there. Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes and Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Podbean, Podvine, Podchaser.com, Spotify, TuneIn, YouTube. All you have to do is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. And you'll find us in all of these. Make sure you subscribe, follow, whatever the verbiage is, to make sure you stay connected with us on all of these wonderful outlets to get our show on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora at your leisure. Big time thanks to our incredible team of partners in Central and Upstate New York. Well, we are rivaling the ACC with all of the institutions that they have, all the members they have. Look at all the members we have in our family. Heritage Hill Brewhouse, Heritage Hill North, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Avicoli's, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Brian's Landing, Ma and Pa's, the snack capital of the world, located for you on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Go and see what I mean by snack capital by visiting them today, letting them know that DT sent you, or Wake Up Call. Ma and Pa's, once again, the snack capital of the world. Mother's Cupboard, Great Lakes Honda City, Pizza Man, GG Cards and Brakes, Servomation Refreshments, and our exclusive multimedia marketing partners with Lemoyne College, Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse, and the Binghamton University Bearcats. You can find Lemoyne, Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse, and Binghamton by going to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. Click subscribe, hit the notification bell, and find our playlist for Lemoyne, BSC Syracuse, and Binghamton. For more information, you can go to LeMoyneDolphins.com, Syracuse.bscbobcats.com, and BUBearcats.com. You can also find them on the homepage of WakeUpCallDT.com and underneath the exclusive partners tab on WakeUpCallDT.com. For now, from the Heritage Hill Studios, I implore you to go to Heritage Hill Brewhouse on 3149 Sweet Road in Pompey, New York, in the country, and in the city, to go to Heritage Hill North on 628 South Main Street at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse. This has been our ACC coverage of every single one of the 17 football members. My predicted order of finish 1 through 17. And you can find us 24/7 with ACC coverage and more on Facebook at WakeUpCallDT, X at CallDT, Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT. Thank you to the ACC for your continued allowance of me to cover all of the incredible time that we've had. Jerry said it's been an education. Thank you, Jerry. hopefully something good comes out of this show. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching and listening. I love learning from you as well. And you'll find us on our social media, as I mentioned. Head off to Heritage Hill and to all of our wonderful partners. And in the meantime, God bless. No stress. Do your best. I'll talk with you all soon. I hope you have a fantastic day and a fantastic start.